Test, test.
We are the last ones to go. Everybody goes before us. You, I think, second, right off the bat. Easy for you.
Oh, first. Never nervous. Right here. Good to see you, bitch. I have something else to do.
I think I speak, the format goes. I think I speak it when I call you. I think you can say thank you very much. You don't have to say a lot. You
So,
say thank you.
I don't want to say a lot because the voice speaks away. This is kind of sad. Usually I'm speaking in person.
Robert Walker can answer the next. He is sort of the driving force behind these awards.
Is it shake the right hand?
Say thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Is that your stuff?
Unless for some reason the first something is going on.
No? Okay.
Go right.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Tuesday, January 16, 2018. Clerk Borling, the roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Here.
Mayor Hopewell.
Present. I don't see our pastor here, so I'm just going to ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, Commissioners, another one of my favorite nights tonight. Item B3 is introduction of guests, but tonight we have some presentations. So I'm going to go down and make a few comments, and then we're going to get this going to recognize our young people. Commissioners and community, this evening will be culminating a great weekend of events that commemorate the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This certainly, as I said, is one of my favorite parts of recognizing the life and legacy of the good doctor by recognizing our young people who we know in the 60s were certainly important to the changes that occurred during that time. This year, we are pleased to present 5 deserving young people with awards tonight, provided by our amazing partners. Some of them have been with us the whole time we've been doing this, and we have a couple new partners: Consumers Energy, Fifth Third Bank, Life EMS Ambulance, and Schupan & Sons. We also have, I know I said there's 5. One of the awards is certainly sponsored by the Lewis Walker Institute, but actually Dr. Lewis Walker himself. So to get us started, I have Judy Woolsey, the assistant to the CEO of Schupan & Sons, will present the first award. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to be here tonight. Our candidate was Samantha Fuller. Can I pull this down? Okay. And reading through Samantha's nomination packet, it was easy to tell that she's just an amazing person. She's had a lot of adversity in her young life, and she has just kept beating the challenges and surviving and making some real strides. The common theme was she never makes excuses, she never quits, and she's always trying to help those around her and not worry about what's happening with herself. She has a hectic day-to-day schedule at Loy Norrix High School. She's involved with Peace Jam, with the coat drive at Loy Norrix. She bell rings for the Salvation Army. She helps students at the El Sol Elementary make Valentine's Day cards for the Battle Creek VA Center. And she's involved with many more events with her community and with her school. She was nominated by Sveri May from Loy Norrix High School, and I'm pleased to present the Schupan & Sons Social Justice Youth Award to Samantha Fuller. Samantha? Turn and look at Sveri.
I just, whoa, do I have to stop with this? Okay, I wouldn't be able to do this without Miss May, of course. She has always pushed me since freshman year, and I'm graduating this year, so I've been stuck with her for a very long time. I'm just very thankful, and I thank you all. I am going to go to KVCC this fall. I already go there right now, taking a little criminal justice class, nothing too serious or anything. But, and then I'll eventually transfer over to Western afterwards.
Thank you, Judy, and what a great recipient. You are, young lady. We are proud of you, and my alma mater, one of my alma maters is KVCC, so you're going to a good place, so congratulations. Commissioners, please join me as I welcome the South Operations Director of Life EMS Ambulance, John Pinkster, to present the next award. How you doing, bro?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am proud to announce this year's recipient of the Life EMS Social Justice Youth Award is Kendra Parkman. Kendra is a leader and positive example for all those she comes in contact with, regardless of their age. She doesn't just volunteer at events, she is involved at events. She makes a point to have meaningful contact with those around her on a consistent basis. Kendra fills her time by getting involved with programs Jeter's Leaders, KC Feeds Kazoo, Summer Discovery, and Charlie's Place community events. Nominated by Takara Dunning, as well as the Turn 2 Foundation, Jeter's Leaders, I am pleased to present this year's Life EMS Social Justice Youth Award to Kendra Parkman.
Hello. I would like to thank my family and friends for supporting me. I am truly honored to receive this award. And most likely, I would like to thank the people who nominated me.
Thank you, Director Pinkster. Next, please welcome the Community President for Fifth Third Bank, Ron Four.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. CJ Washington is this year's winner of the Fifth Third Bank Social Justice Youth Award. Involved does not even begin to describe CJ. Kappa League, Link Crew, DECA, Yearbook, and Stepping to Success, among many other organizations. He's also a member of the Loy Norrix football team. Very proud of the fact that they had a couple wins this year. He also goes to local elementary schools and reads to kids, amongst many other things that he does. But what really makes CJ stand out, and why we're really proud to be involved with CJ, is that he's not afraid to share his own stories to help others learn about equality. He does this in such a way that others listen and respond to, invoking conversation rather than resisting or becoming argumentative, which sounds very much like Martin Luther King. It's that kind of open dialogue that ensures that the future of Kalamazoo is in good hands. And nominated by Tisha Pancott from Loy Norrix High School, I'm very proud to present this year's Fifth Third Bank Social Justice Youth Award to CJ Washington.
Excuse my voice, I'm kind of sick right now. first want to give glory to God for being able to get this award, and I want to thank Ms. Pankow for nominating me for this award. It's truly a blessing to get this and be able to see what I do, help others, and give me an award to show what I do. Thank you.
I don't know where they find the time. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Mr. Washington, congratulations. Proud of you. Next, please welcome the Community Affairs Manager for Consumers Energy, Dennis McKee.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Really happy to be here tonight and really proud of the opportunity that's been granted by the city and by the sponsor for providing a very outstanding young lady an award and some well-deserved recognition. Tonight, I've got the opportunity to provide to Yasmin Abdullah Bush an award for her outstanding service as a counselor to children through the Parks and Recreation Summer Program. She's a counselor in training who has donated her time each summer, more than 300 hours each summer, as well as worked in special events and after-school activities. But I think importantly, too, is that she's learning from that experience and she aspires to be a youth counselor in the future. She is bestowing upon the youth of Kalamazoo some great lessons that I think Dr. King would be proud of as well. So I'm very, very honored to have the opportunity tonight to give Yasmin Abdullah Bush the Consumers Energy Social Justice Youth Award for this year. Thank you so much. Nice job.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to thank Ms. Cynthia and Mr. Pete for nominating me and always allowing me to be involved with children every summer. And I want to thank you all for having me, and thanks Consumer Energy for sponsoring me.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. We're honored tonight. I'm very honored to have my good friend, Dr. Lewis Walker, in the house, and for him to come forward to present the award named in honor of him and his work, his racial justice work in Kalamazoo. We know that he is a well-known figure in our community, not just around racial justice, but justice in general. So please welcome Dr. Lewis Walker.
He always embarrasses me in a good way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish I had time to really talk about the next recipient. As one who stands before you who experienced, at an early age, discrimination and injustice, reading about this young woman sent me back to Selma, Alabama, where I grew up. She too has experienced prejudice and discrimination, not only because of the color of her skin, but because of her headgear, hijab. So last night I thought hard and long about her, and in thinking about her, I'll give you her name in a moment, I'm being rude. In thinking about her, I thought about the young people in our city and in our country. And knowing what I know about her, I can truthfully tell you, if all of our young people were like this young woman, our prisons would be depopulated. Our colleges would be bursting at the seam. She is truly an outstanding young woman whom I'm very proud of. This young woman I keep talking about is Israel Said, who uses all the spheres of her influence from forensics to empowered clubs to journalism to promote equality. She helped facilitate 2 Black History Month assemblies at the high school and junior high levels, and even participated in an exchange program with Stockbridge High School, an all-white rural school on the east side of the state, where she recruited other Muslim students to cite with their student body to talk about Islamophobia and discrimination. We would continue to list her involvement throughout our community, but maybe the best way to tell you about Israel is by quoting her state championship narrative in A Question of Identity, My Journey with His Job. She says, when a country has been constructed in a way that tears down those in marginalized groups, it encouraged me to rise back up stronger than before. Yes, I am ridiculed and rejected at times because of my religion, but the ignorance that fuels the bigotry directed at me provides me with more reason to remain educated. Nominated by Amanda Thrope and Jim French from the Portage Northern High School, I'm happy. I'm more than happy. I'm proud to present this year's Dr. Lewis Walker Social Justice Award to Israel Said. Ms. Said. Come here.
I want to thank Dr. Lewis Walker for those kind words. I truly appreciate this award. And I also want to thank the people who nominated my teachers at Portage Northern. And I'm just really happy in general to be here. And thank you to the City of Kalamazoo. Thank you.
We're in good hands, aren't we? Commissioners and community, all of these recipients will receive a certificate, a cash award in the amount of $200, and a 1-year membership to the NAACP. So if you would, one more time, please join me in congratulating all 5 of our recipients this evening. Commissioners, as I was standing there with the award recipients, you know, sometimes we have a lot of work that we do in this community, and a lot of different ways, a lot of things that are happening, and you know, people get on that wonderful social media and blast in our city about this, that, or what have you, and which I think social media has certainly some good points, and I think we can all admit it has some bad points, because some individuals don't always bring, you know, the balance in there or the equity in their statements. But tonight is an example, these young people being here tonight is an example of the greatness of our city, of the opportunity that we have as we try to continue to make this place great. So as you get that negativity that occurs, I would remind you of these young people and the adults that work with them and their families that are building their lives and doing great things in our city. So I just wanted to say that. Commissioners, before you, you have the adoption of the formal agenda. Are there any changes? Hearing none, anyone wanting to comment on items under F, the consent agenda, that item will need to be moved to the regular agenda. If you have such an item, if you'd indicate at this time that is on the consent agenda. Hearing none, Communications Manager Moore.
We would certainly like to thank all of our winners tonight. We want to thank our partners for helping us make this evening possible. And not only tonight, we want to thank those volunteers from yesterday who really helped us to observe Martin Luther King's birthday with a day of service. So really thank everybody for coming out and sharing in that day of service, and thank those who coordinated. Specifically want to give a shout out to Martin Marcos of the City Manager's Office.
Thank you, Manager Moore. We are now on item E. I'll open a public hearing to receive public comments on an ordinance to rezone 243 parcels located between West Lovell Street and Stockbridge Avenue from Zone CC and CN-1 and M-1 to Zone CCBD, CN-1, CN-2, and RM-36. Madam Manager.
Mayor, we'd like to call our city planner, Ms. Christine Anderson, up to the podium to give a brief overview of this item.
Good evening, Madam Planner.
Thank you, Commissioners. So what I'm going to do quickly is overview the case before you tonight. I'm going to talk about the intent, why we propose this. I'm going to talk about how it ties to the strategic vision and the master plan. I'll go through what we're proposing and then talk about some of the community discussions that we had and how we incorporated those, or how we discussed those with our residents and our community leaders. So first, we started this project because the corridor leading into downtown, primarily on Burdick Street and adjacent to Burdick Street, is zoned community commercial. Community commercial is the same district that we use out on Stadium. It's the same district we use on M43 near Drake. It's what we use on Portage near the airport. It's intended for large-scale development. It's intended for uses that require a lot of parking, that are generally attracted to streets with high traffic volumes, larger lots, and could involve more deliveries, more noise, and more light than a neighborhood commercial use. The list of uses that are allowed in the community commercial district and the CC district are quite permissive. So these are things like packaged liquor, kennels, gas stations, auto repair, car sales, things that are out of scale and out of context with what we heard from the community for this Burdick Street corridor, which was walkable urban environment. And so what we're here for tonight, and what we took to the Plan Commission, was to discuss how we change to a commercial district that meets the vision for the area. And so I'm going to go over very quickly how that relates to the strategic vision, the master plan, both the recent master plan, and this also dates back to the 2010 master plan, Imagine Kalamazoo, and how this is consistent with other city actions that we've taken. And first, I wanted to point out, in terms of strategic vision, economic vitality, specifically the goal bubble about downtown and corridor experience, which states, support the development of a downtown district and vibrant commercial corridors to meet the changing needs of our community. And we feel that we heard this through Imagine Kalamazoo and through our community process, and that is one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is to help promote that on this Burdick Street corridor. I apologize for the wordiness of the slides. I was limited to 4 slides, so I'm putting on as much information as I can. This request is not new. This desire is not new. This dates back to the 2010 master plan, where the future land use plan noted this area as neighborhood scale commercial. We continued this into the 2025 master plan, which this body approved in October of this past fall. Both of these plans call for neighborhood scale development and neighborhood scale uses. Community commercial opens the door up to uses that are more intensive, and there's concern that this area does not want to become Stadium Drive. Neighborhood context, what I mean are traditional commercial and residential buildings and the scale that promotes that walkable urban environment that you would want leading into your downtown. In the 2025 future land use plan, this area is noted at the north end, directly adjacent to downtown, as urban edge. So it could be a mix of uses. It's coming off the downtown, so it can be a little more intensive in scale, but as you move into the neighborhood, it's neighborhood edge. And again, it can allow a mix of uses as long as the scale meets with that of the neighborhood. So this is not the first action that the city has undertaken to make sure that we have the right scale zoning in the right location. Last year, a little over a year ago, we took a similar action at the corner of Oakland and Parkview, where we took a corner property that was zoned community commercial and changed it to neighborhood commercial. We are working with the north side right now. We've done stuff on the east side of downtown to revitalize manufacturing districts to allow uses and scale of development that's appropriate in the area. And we continue to work with Vine, Edison, and Northside to make sure that everything that goes in meets with the scale and the vision of the area. So this is a map up in front of you that outlines what we're talking about. So that, again, the primary impetus of this project was to remove the community commercial in this area and replace it with something that was of the right context and scale. So starting at the very north end, we looked at expanding the central business district zoning a couple blocks because that evened out the boundary up there. There are two areas where we took it from commercial to multifamily residential. And the reason why we did that in those areas is because the rest of that block was already multifamily residential. And there was commercial that was cutting into it, and so we cleaned up the block. And the rest of the area we are proposing for neighborhood commercial, CN2. We have 2 neighborhood commercial districts. And so when we started this activity, we did research. So we went out and drove the corridor and did write down land uses to understand what was there, what buildings were there, what signage is there. We reviewed it against other commercial districts that we have in the code. And we looked at the master plan and the zoning map because we wanted to make sure that whatever we proposed provided us with what we were trying to achieve, the intent that we were trying to achieve. And the goal is always to create the least number of nonconformances as possible. So throughout our discussions, we had several community meetings, one at the Vine neighborhood and one here in City Hall with residents. We had 2 planning commission hearings, posted on social media, and sent a variety of notices with letters out to the community, and had a lot of dialogue. I want to point out 3 things that we discussed, or 3 things that came up throughout the process, and the first is height. So the community commercial district allows a taller height than neighborhood commercial. That is true. It allows for more intensive buildings, generally again on larger lots than what we have in this area, which was platted, quite an old plat within our town, and a lot of smaller lots. So when we heard those concerns from the residents, from some residents about the height, I talked about 3 possible solutions. So neighbor commercial allows for 35 feet, so about 3.5 stories. And I said, well, if we're looking at the northern end of the area that we're rezoning, I think that we could look at taller heights. We could support that because you're coming directly off the downtown. So how could we achieve that in the short term? One, if a project was ready and came to us tomorrow and said, oh, well, I wanted this taller height. What do I do? I'm ready to go. I would say we could do a variance process. And city staff could support that variance because you're right off the downtown and you have buildings that are taller up on that very northern part. And that would be a short-term solution for somebody. We have downtown design review guidelines that extend through this area that allow heights to be based on context. And that's something that's really important, and that's what we've been talking about, is making sure that everything that we're doing here is in context and scale. So what those design guidelines say is that, particularly for the northern end of the corridor, you are allowed to build to the height of the adjacent buildings or those across the street and up to 2 stories taller, depending on your project. And then the third way that we can kind of look at height is we are, and you've heard me say it a couple times in both this setting as well as working group meetings, we're about to open up the zoning code and do some large-scale update. And that is another opportunity that we have to review height within our permitted zoning districts. Second, I want to touch on property values. We heard some concerns that the change from community commercial to neighborhood commercial would negatively impact property values in the area. So we did our homework. We went and talked to the assessor's office to help us understand what goes into property valuation. And we learned that many factors go into property valuation, of which zoning is one. When looking at the example that we were using in our conversation, going from one commercial district to another, where there are a number of overlapping uses, would not necessarily be viewed as a major change. And the other thing to note is that property values, when the assessor does a property value, it's a snapshot of where the property is now, today. It's not looking at future speculation. Last, and something that we have definitely heard, was a concern about the permitted uses if the zoning were to go through. And I said that, when we started this process, it was our goal, as our intention, to achieve the vision while still, creating the fewest nonconformances that we could do. And that's why we chose the CN2 district versus the CN1 district, our 2 neighborhood commercial districts. By making this choice, that meant that the auto sales lots that currently exist on the corridor, there are 3 of them, will become legally nonconforming uses. So what does that mean? Kind of a legalese term. What it means is that that use is allowed to exist on the corridor in perpetuity. However, no new auto sales uses would be allowed to develop in this area, in the area zoned as CN2. So why did we go forward with that? So a couple of things. One, again, the vision here is neighborhood commercial, walkable urban environment. When we talk about that, we think about what makes an area active and walkable. And we think about buildings that relate to the street, that have entrances and sidewalk and windows. We look at buildings that are a little bit closer to the street, look at things that you want to walk next to. And when we look at our community as a whole and we're trying to achieve that, we generally say parking lots kind of create areas of inactivity. And if we're trying to create a very walkable corridor, we would want to discourage a whole lot of parking lots because they don't attract that active walkability. The design of an auto sales lot is very similar to that of a parking lot. It does not necessarily have the building up to the street. We don't require that. The scale of what the auto sales lots could be is also not regulated. It could be one lot, or it could be multiple lots put together, and that would be something that would be detrimental to the vision of the area. Could we create new standards in our zoning code as we update our zoning code to consider allowing auto sales or other similar uses that are traditionally much more auto-oriented? If we were able to work on the form and scale, we could. But that's not currently what's available in the community commercial district or in the neighborhood commercial district. So for the time being, those 3 uses would be legally non-conforming. But it is something that we can look at how we can better regulate that form and that scale, because really that's the most important thing, right? It's how you feel when you walk down the corridor, and we can help adjust that with some of our zoning updates. So I am happy to take questions from you. I'm going to go back, if that's okay, for the map, if that's the best reference point. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Cunningham?
Just one. Can I get a little more clarity on Vine's stance in regards to this change?
Vine neighborhood. Sure. So we worked with both the Vine neighborhood director and the Edison director, which are the two neighborhoods of record that cover this area. They were along with us for the whole process, attended meetings, hosted one of our meetings, attended Plan Commission hearings, helped us post flyers about the meeting. Steve Walsh, the director of the Vine neighborhood, took this to his board, and they chose to remain neutral on it. And their statement was, we recognize that we have Vine residents who are for this project and who are concerned for this project, and continue to take a neutral stance. I spoke with, I've been speaking with the neighborhood directors all the way along. They are aware of all the activities, and we've tried to keep them up to date with public comment, and they did not feel a need to change their stance one way or the other, but to remain neutral.
Commissioner Queen.
Thank you. It's obvious you guys have done an awful lot of work on this. But I got a couple of things I'm not clear on. Are you saying that you cannot build up to 65 feet? Does this zoning prohibit building up to 65 feet?
That would be correct. CN2 has a maximum height of 35 feet. Now, the two caveats of that are if you are in the design guideline area, which looks at context.
Say that again, please.
If you are in the design guideline area, then that's an overlay that exists over the zoning, and it requires a review. There's a downtown review committee that's run by Sharon Ferraro that will review projects if they're asking for something that's different than the zoning but meets with the downtown design review guidelines. So in those areas, the height would be, it says it needs to be in context with the buildings on your block and the block across the street. And so that's how they review projects. And I went back and talked to Sharon this afternoon to make sure I'm interpreting it correctly, and that is, that's that is the function of the downtown design review body. That covers the northern part of this district, and the second part, the southern part of the district is covered by what's known as an appendix to that, and it's the Southtown Design Guidelines, which also talks about the context of the adjacent buildings.
So, okay. Second question I have is, it's your contention, and I guess with the community assessor, that this rezoning will not affect the value of the houses in that area?
The zoning itself would be unlikely to impact the value. There are a lot of things that they consider. Age of structure, income of structure, all of those details. When going from community commercial to neighborhood commercial, that was not, the conversation that we had, that was not a significant change in terms of how they assess properties. It's one commercial district to another with a significant number of overlapping uses.
Okay, so here's where I'm stuck. In the master plan, it says that the communities, the neighborhoods, were going to be able to plan what happens in their neighborhood.
Yep.
Why are we making this decision without asking the neighborhoods whether they want this or not?
Well, I would say we certainly did ask the neighborhoods.
But they came out and said neutral, that they haven't taken a stand on that.
The neighborhood board did. That's correct.
Okay.
We spoke, we had 2 community meetings. We had one in Vine and we had one here at the community hall. And we absolutely heard concerns, and I've tried to cover some of the concerns that we heard as they related to property values and use and restrictions. But we also heard comments of support. Yeah, this is the context that we talked about. This is the scale that we talked about. This is, again, not something new. We heard about this starting back in 2010. We felt comfortable moving forward with this request because of the longevity that we've been hearing, neighborhood commercial, because of between that and the recent, not too far recent past of creating the Southtown Design Guidelines, which are fairly new. for the context of this area. So we felt comfortable that we had a significant amount of input that represented what we were doing. Now, yes, we are about to do neighborhood plans, and we're going to be spending the next several years doing neighborhood plans. And so if a zoning project comes up that we feel is important and it doesn't necessarily align with the completion of the neighborhood plan, then we will go out to the neighborhoods to host those meetings, to have those discussions, to make sure that we are covering the right issues. Ideally, those things do align, but we know we have many neighborhoods to get exact plans for, and every neighborhood has the ability to choose what they want to include in their neighborhood plan, right? So it's possible that a neighborhood could choose to focus on parks because that's the one issue they can get full, support and consensus and maybe grant money on, and may not have a whole lot of land use discussions. So in that scenario, we will reach out and have meetings in the neighborhoods like we did for this project.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
One thing I think, excuse me, that's complicated about this is there's so many parts of it that seem confusing that you try to overlay on each other. Master plan, zoning changes. Then, if you go deeper than that, some discussion about defining the particulars of what could be allowed in a given zoning designation. So, and you talked about the fact that that is something to come as well, right? That there will be some further discussion, and maybe I misunderstood you.
No, we will. The entire zoning code will be getting a review over the next 18 months to 2 years. And I think I've presented on this before, is that the purpose of the zoning code and the zoning map is to achieve the vision that you have in the master plan. And our zoning code dates from 2005. And so there are, and I mentioned some cases, where we're already starting to work in some areas where we know there's manufacturing, when a manufacturing zoning classification where we know that community vision is not that. In this situation, it was manufacturing, but it was a commercial district that was too intensive to meet the vision for the area. So yes, a broader zoning activity will be done over the next 18 months to 2 years. But we felt because we had, in this particular area, leading up to our downtown, that we had enough history and a clear vision that we were able to move forward.
So just to follow up on that, so the designations that we're using that define what can and cannot be done or what's allowed in various zoning areas, that will remain consistent? That's the question. And we may then be using those defined designations to clear up other areas as we move around. Is that a correct interpretation, or am I misunderstanding it?
As we review the zoning ordinance over the next 18, I think I'm answering your question, so tell me if I am not.
Okay.
As we review the zoning ordinance over the next bit, we will be reviewing all the districts. And if we need to make tweaks in terms of height or setbacks, or to add or change uses, we could do that. That's a big public engagement process. That is a process that will go again through not only community meetings, but the Planning Commission, as well as come before you. So whatever we do will be vetted. It's possible that we will create new zoning districts. We've talked about form-based code and how we could apply that to achieve that context and that scale. Remember, form-based code looks at the form and the scale, context of a lot, and puts it at the same priority as what the use is. Because a lot of uses kind of are on the same plane, whether it's a shoe store, a toy store, or a salon. Those are all lovely retail uses. We're more concerned of that. The building, if it's a walkable urban area, is up to the street, has the storefront, has a clear entrance, and those type of details. That's something that a form-based code will allow us to dial in a little more on to make sure that we're getting it right in every location. Did I answer your question?
Close. So one more question maybe help clarify. So it is possible in going through this 18-month process that something could occur where you made a decision, all right, we've already, in this instance, for example, designated this area CN2 rather than CC. Neighborhood
commercial.
Yes.
Right.
But we're going to allow heights of up to 45 feet rather than 35 feet? Or is that?
I mean, I would be very doubtful if we heard something so significantly different than what we heard.
Okay.
Now, that said, public participation, engagement has an expiration date, right? So we will absolutely be going back out to confirm it. I would be surprised if in the next 18 months to 2 years, if we heard something completely flip-flopped. You know, I know your example was very extreme from one height to another, but yeah, I just don't think that it would be quite that radical. It would be more on the lines of, oh, so if we allow these northernmost blocks because they're closest to downtown where there are tall buildings and we're okay with that, could we extend that down a couple more blocks? That would be, I think, on line of the conversations that we'd have over the next 18 months to 2 years. Or, you know, I think that, you know, I think that we could look at adding some form parameters to allow, with a special use or by right, uses that are traditionally more auto-oriented if we put in things that help us achieve that context goal. Those would be the things that I would consider, that I think we would be considering.
Okay. So just kind of along those lines. So for example, CN2 as one of the permitted uses allows multiple family dwellings.
Yep.
Which is certainly a permitted use in an RM24 or RM36. So how do those two different designations, does that define a very different kind of multiple family dwelling under the CN2 designation that it would under an RM designation?
No, not right now. The parameters that we give in our zoning districts are simply kind of building envelope parameters, right? It's that we say, you know, it must be set back a certain amount, it can be this high. Those are the parameters that we give. If we move to a form-based code, we could give more detail in terms of windows on the front, doors, roof if we wanted to. You know, we have more opportunity to change those parameters. I think that in a neighborhood commercial area, particularly outside of core nodes, in the master plan, remember, we designated nodes at key intersections, which are really meant to be our focused commercial center areas. You know, outside of that, residential on the ground floor, multifamily buildings are perfectly appropriate, right? We want to make sure that we're supporting those commercial uses. So having that as a permitted use in this district is perfectly appropriate.
Commissioner Sykes?
Just a couple quick questions. I appreciated Commissioner Cooney's question, and I believe I understood your answer as to why you feel comfortable moving forward with this before the neighborhood plan. I guess I'm wondering why. Like, is there a sense of urgency? Is there a reason that we're doing this before folks get a chance to do their own neighborhood plan?
I think it goes back to the answers that I said. I think one, that we felt we had going back to 2010, a clear vision that did not change with master plans, that this area should be neighborhood scale. I think we talked a lot throughout Imagine Kalamazoo about our downtown being that walkable urban center, and we know a lot of best practices about what the corridors leading into your downtown should be. So I think it's a combination of those efforts.
And then just to double check that I'm understanding you correctly, properties that already exist in this zone will be grandfathered in, and that will exist even after a change of ownership?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And that's a protection that's true across the board with zoning. You know, we provide standards in our zoning code, but there's always relief valves. Whether it's through legal nonconforming, whether it's through the ability to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, you know, that is what, because each lot, our lots are not homogeneous. We're a built community, we're an old community, and so we need to make sure that, you know, as things change, that we're not creating, you know, a lot of negative impacts from that.
Commissioner Urban?
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. Could you tell us what the history has been in terms of getting to this point with the this proposed zoning change? For example, it started with Imagine Kalamazoo, right?
Certainly. It did start with Imagine Kalamazoo, and when we first talked to the Plan Commission about it, that was one of the things that several of the commissioners noted. This was just finished talking about it and first project out of the gate and how that aligned. So we started back in October. We provide letters to every property owner and resident within the area, as well as 300 feet around, to signal that we are doing a meeting at the Planning Commission. At the Planning Commission, and in that letter, we also noticed that we're going to do a meeting at the Vine Neighborhood Association to have an open house where people could come and ask questions about what was proposed. And we had maps and posters up. We had a Planning Commission hearing. There were certainly some concerns stated, many of which the ones I noted tonight. So we continued it to have some more dialogue. We had a second community meeting. This one we did here, and we did a formal presentation with a question and answer session. We did those meetings at 2 different times. The first one was from 4 to 6. The second one started at 7 p.m., which at both we had plus or minus 24 people, like upper 20s at one and lower 20s at the other. We had a second meeting in front of the Plan Commission where it was recommended to you for approval. For every public hearing, we have sent letters, again, that same level of notice, which is above and beyond what the state requires us to do. If a case is continued, you don't necessarily need to do notice. And we posted things on social media. We had our neighborhood partners post things on social media to let folks know that these meetings were going to happen. And we know that people saw them because folks came and said, "Oh, I saw it on the Vine Facebook page, so I came down."
What was the result of pardon me, what was the result of the last Planning Commission meeting on this topic?
They approved it. I believe it was, there was one vote against, and everyone else voted in favor of sending it forward to you with the recommendation of approval.
Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioners? I have a couple. And so I like to do this in a way that you can picture things. So we had an individual come to us at the last meeting regarding her home and a lot that was next door to her home. I think it was on Lake Street, yep, near our public safety facility headquarters and across from the daycare, I think.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right now, in that zone, how large of a structure could go on the property next door to her house? So
right now, that's community commercial. So as long as it meets the community commercial setbacks and impervious cover requirements, that is the limit. So right now, it's a vacant lot and it's a wooded area. So if we are looking at our requirements for the community commercial district, there is no, a rear setback of 25, side setbacks of about 25 feet, and it allows up to 65 feet in height, and maximum impervious coverage, which means the most amount of the lot that could be paved is 80%. So that's what would be allowed by right now. Right now? Right now. What would happen with the change? So going in reverse order, it is slightly less. It is, in terms of impervious cover, it's 75 feet. Maximum height is 35 feet. And the setbacks are a little bit smaller because it's meant to be neighborhood scale. So buildings generally up closer to the property lines. But the difference in height is 65 to 35, and there's a 5% less impervious coverage. In addition to that, what I'd like to point out is that there is a list of uses that would be allowed now that would not be permitted under the new code. Such as? Kennels, gas station, auto repair, car wash. I'll say packaged liquor, but I know that's across the street from a daycare, so as long as the daycare remains open, the packaged liquor use would be limited. Community commercial also allows things like light equipment sales, light equipment rental, so think of probably like your Goggin, or U-Haul kind of small equipment rentals and small truck rentals. Those are uses that are permitted in CC that would not be permitted in CN2.
So right now, those things could happen, but not in CN2.
Not, and I apologize for using the acronyms, not in the neighborhood commercial district that we are proposing, correct.
And then there's a Portage Corridor plan that a lot of people have been working on for a lot of years. How is that affected by this? Because I know there are a lot of thinking about what they wanted Portage Corridor to be. Is that affected by this?
No.
Okay.
No,
And
this
so-
really does try to focus it on the Burdick area.
Okay.
It does go, a couple lots off, but that was meant, again, we did that only where areas of community commercial, so we weren't leaving random lots of community commercial, or if there are areas where we're able to round out the block, if everything else was already residential, we were able to make it residential to make that even. But we had a very narrow focus, because again, the intent was to look at community commercial and how it was not the ideal district in this location.
So when you say 65 feet, I heard 65 feet and I heard 35 feet with CN2. And commissioners, having been a planning commissioner, I'm a little very interested in this part. So right now, if you look at our public safety headquarters, how tall is that a 3-story building or a 2-story building?
We are a 2-story building at Stockbridge.
At Stockbridge, 2-story. At or public safety?
Oh, at the corner of Crosstown and
Yeah, headquarters.
3 stories?
2 stories.
2 stories.
How many feet is 2 stories? Who knows?
So when you think about if you're doing retail, I guess construction now, which I know is not the exact same, but that's how I know how to talk about it. You generally want your ground floor to be a decent tall height as you get, your store, so you can get light in. So that could be 12 to 15 feet, and then you could do 10 to 11 beyond that. That's for retail. I don't know off the top of my. I'm sure that our building code says what the lowest height you can have between floors for residential. 7.5 or 8 would be what I would guess, but that'd be pretty low. But 8 to 9 is a pretty good judge, 8, 9, 10. So that's how I think about it. So, up to a 6.5 versus up to a 3.5. Now, depending on the type of roof you do, if you have a pitched roof, you could, in theory, do a story under the eaves. So like in your attic, if you had a gabled or a pitched roof. Does that make sense?
So again, on that property that I mentioned on Lake Street, the height of the building that could go next to that house could be higher than public safety?
It could, in theory. I would have to take a look at the square footage. I'd have to look at the lot and draw out the plan, right? Because we have maximum impervious coverage requirements. Okay. We would need to make sure we could park it. There are some constraints. It's not just that it could, you could put down a 65-foot story building up and down Burdick Street, right? If you were to do that, you would need to make sure that you would have the right size lot, that you'd meet all the other requirements, parking, impervious coverage, access, those type of things. So there are certainly some constraints, but if we're looking purely at what in theory could be allowed in CC versus in community commercial versus neighborhood commercial, then the answer is yes. And again, think about community commercial as typically being in areas with larger lots. It's not our traditionally older platted areas where the lots are much more narrow and not as deep, as opposed to the areas out on Stadium Drive, large shopping center size lots, where you might have more flexibility for parking and height.
So getting back to something sort of that Commissioner Anderson was asking about, CN2 and CC.
I know.
CN2 is less intense. So for a neighborhood district, is it typical that you want less intense uses compared to higher intense uses in a neighborhood? I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a couple of reasons. One, when you think about your more intense uses, usually they require a higher volume of traffic to attract customers. Or they need wider driveways for deliveries because the size of what's coming in and out is large. Or they need a larger lot to accommodate their parking with their height and the number of uses they can get in. So that's one reason why you look at different locations for different intensities. But the other, and what we've been talking about, is that scale and that context. And so what we would like to see on this Burdick Street corridor that leads from our downtown into Vine and into Edison is something that matches with the scale of the adjacent area.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cunningham?
So essentially, what you're proposing is a best practice? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think that we do have...
For the scale. My apologies.
No, I think we do have best practices behind what we are doing, but I think we also have the input that we received from Imagine Kalamazoo and our community process as well to match with that. And that's what we tried to do, throughout when we created the master plan. It wasn't just, I'm a planner and I know what's best kind of research, but it's how do I take that and talk about it with the community and then come up with something. So I want to make sure that it's a marriage between the two.
So would I be correct in saying, essentially, we do want the neighborhood associations to take the lead, but we are providing the guidelines on what they will create as a vision for their community with this rezoning?
I think overall, when we do neighborhood plans, we want to make sure that, we've always said that we're the partner, but we do want to allow the neighborhood to pick what their focus is, and based on their Imagine Kalamazoo data, and based on what they're hearing from their residents. Again, I'm going to go back to that park example. If that's a really big topic for them, then that's what they need to focus on, and that's what they can move forward on. In terms of rezoning and zoning activities, I think that we made a really clear path for us on how we move forward with all of our activities from here on out, right? We engaged 4,000 voices through Imagine Kalamazoo, and we set a precedent for ourselves. We wrote our public participation plan for ourselves. We wrote an engagement toolbox to help our neighborhoods and our other departments reach out. And so we will continue to do that with all of our efforts, including zoning. And if the process does not perfectly align with a neighborhood plan, then we go for that community engagement. And I think the other thing to say is that, ideally you are updating your zoning code to match your plans, right? But there's going to be some times where you're a little bit out of sync because of the length of time that they take to do. So then it doesn't mean you either don't do it or you just do it blindly. You go out and you confirm, is this still, are we on the right path?
One last question. So if I am a car lot owner, my business is growing and I want to expand it into the lot next to me and it's not zoned correctly, I know that my area is grandfathered in, would I be able to grow into that next lot?
No.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yeah, so you're saying the neighborhood plan process takes a couple of years.
It will take us a couple years to get through all the neighborhoods.
Get through all of them. Okay.
And we will be doing that zoning work kind of at the same time.
Okay. Do you envision a situation where we could rezone this section now and then go through the neighborhood planning process and find out that this doesn't fit the vision of the neighborhood? And then what would we do with that?
So I'll answer, I guess, the same way that I answered Commissioner Anderson. I don't think in the next 18 months to 2 years that we're going to see a significant, complete change in what we heard. Is it possible? Yes. But that's why we go out and confirm to make sure that we're still on the right track. Vine and Edison are starting their neighborhood plans right now. So, and we'll continue to do work. What exactly they focus on in terms of their neighborhood plan, I'm not 100% sure yet. Again, I use that example of parks. They might have their own unique issues that they really, really want to cover. And, that might be, they might see things that they can achieve easy, in a very easy way, running their own process or working with one department versus, a larger process. So
But you do not foresee a situation where
I do not foresee something that would be in complete contradiction to what we're doing now.
Okay.
And if I did, I would not have brought this forward.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Quinn?
Well,
You know, I like this plan.
So I want to make sure we're asking questions. We'll have time to make statements.
Okay, I'll
during
wait till
discussion.
then.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioners? Hearing none, anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item? You'll have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Also, if you'd sign in on the sheet either before or after, that would be great. Good evening.
I'm Richard Stewart. I reside in the Southtown area, 914 South Burdick. As you can see on Sunday's Kalamazoo Gazette, they quoted your staff as admitting this is to limit commercial development, and it admits it's going to lower our property values. Our protest was filed, but city staff determined that it didn't reach 20% of the square foot, only 18%, with 45 signatures of property owners and 75 properties represented in the 243. You are required to pass overwhelming rejected CN2 downgrading by a 2/3 majority vote if 20% of the square foot of land mass is signed by owners. I believe we have met this requirement, and your staff has miscalculated or undercalculated by at least 2%. I will FOIA this information following today and file for an appeal with the state if you happen to have violated our rights to a 2/3 majority vote tonight. Staff is using anonymous caller information and anonymous email information to claim support. However, we have not found any evidence of support in our door-to-door grassroots campaign. Southtown is currently one of the most diverse business districts in Kalamazoo. We have 3 minority-owned neighborhood auto-related businesses. All 3 of these minority-owned businesses will be made non-conforming tonight with the stroke of a pen if you vote this zoning downgrade through. City staff will tell you that these non-conforming businesses can remain indefinitely, but that is not true. At the first fire or first storm damage, these businesses will not be allowed to rebuild or reopen. CN2 is discriminatory in this process. My neighbor is John Davis Auto. His business is a neighborhood business that sells reliable cars at affordable prices to neighborhood residents that they can afford. John also fixes neighborhood kids' bicycles for free. He is a valuable piece of our neighborhood, and his auto-related business is appropriate for our neighborhood. Who are you to suggest otherwise? Here's the list of 45 property owners who have signed our protest against this blanket rezoning. It includes 75 parcels. Ross Stancotti has a number of properties. Nancy Troff and Denning. Leonard Stafford, one of the auto-related minority-owned businesses. Francois Moyet, he owns Henderson Castle and a number of properties. Dan Adams owns Jolder's McLean Funeral Home. Albert Dines, pastor of Alpha Omega Ministries and a number of parcels behind Fellows. John Vandersom, owner of Vandersom's Floral. Jeff Coupler owns Top Dog. You will make non-conforming, making his decades-old drive-through non-conforming. John Milne Tobacco, the tobacco store in South Burdick. Tom Swyatt, owner of the Bond Company on Crosstown. Michael Corso, a resident. LaShawn Pearson, owner of the building, the frame store. Blue Dolphin. He owns both Blue Dolphin, Steve Stamos, and the auto-related business he runs to a party, another minority-owned business, corner of Lake and Burdick. Pamela Green, a resident. Can't read that one. Tina McClinton, a resident, and Felix Vasquez, a resident. Michael Fleckenstein owns a number of properties. Bo Singe, Garrett Bullhays. This is totally premature to vote on this before the neighborhood has the neighborhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, guys. Chris Wumhoff, currently homeless. I'll come back to you guys later about some other stuff, but all I wanted to say about this is what I heard about this is that we had 2 meetings for something that was going to affect Vine and Edison, and we had those meetings in Vine in City Hall, not in Edison. And I feel like that's something that gets brought up, kind of how we're getting skipped over. And I didn't know anything about this, but just listening in already tonight, they skipped right over us. And this piece that they're talking about is supposed to be about us. You can have it down here, but not in our neighborhood. So that's all I got for that.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Mike Fleckenstein. I'm a significant property holder in this zone, and I worry about these wholesale changes a great deal, not because it's academic, but because I've experienced the marginalization of other properties I've owned through the same process. I worry about unintended consequences, and I worry about the neighborhood businesses that are there today but may not be tomorrow. What happens if one of our historic businesses moves out of town, leaving a hunk of land that might not be able to be used that way again? So I have some concerns about the wholesale changes that have occurred here, or that may occur here. As I said, this is by experience that I come to you about this. Several years ago, the block of Burdick Street between Crosstown and Stockbridge, just on my side of the road, was downgraded from one zone to another. And I asked the planner at the time, I said, what's the real consequence here? Oh, well, you can't have drive-throughs. And I'm going, you mean we can't have a bank? Now, personally, I think we need a bank around there, but we can't have a bank because they want a drive-through. And so it's this kind of thing that concerns me, and and frankly and largely I'm not impacted by this for most of the properties that I own, but I do have some current concerns for those that would be impacted, and I also think this is a premature action, and that when somebody says to you the way you'd like to see it as you come downtown, I would have preferred that somebody turned around and said the way you'd like to see it, and I haven't been asked that question. So I would beg your consideration to not pass this change this evening and let the neighborhoods be more involved and get those plans in place before we start limiting the closest, most prominent properties we have to something that costs so much to build upon that you can't do it because you can't get enough height. Those are the kinds of problems that I see cropping up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Jeremy Cole. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I own property in this district. I never got mailed on this, and so I just heard about it 2 days ago. So most of the information I'm going to discuss here is coming from the 15-minute presentation I just viewed. So one of the concerns that the city brought up is property values not being decreased. I think there's a difference between an SEV and an actual property value. I own property that's the SEV, well, the SEV is 50% of what the city says it should be valued at. So I've got property that's SEV is $15,000, the value should be $30,000, and the house is worth $100,000. That doesn't mean the SEV isn't really indicative of the value. So let's turn that around. Let's say the SEV is $50,000, and so the city says the value is $100,000. After this downgrade, what if that property can now only sell for $70,000, right? So the SEV can only increase by the cost of, or the rate of inflation, or 2%. So it can't jump. That's why I've got properties that are SEV'd at $30,000 and they're worth $100,000. They're two different things. They're using SEV as saying the value will not change. That's not true. The SEV may not, but the value of the property may change. Okay, so I was a one-time member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. When they say that, like the auto shop can remain in perpetuity, right? We had a issue come before us on the ZBA where there was a duplex over in Millwood that in an area of all residential single-family homes, there was a fire there. The owner said, well, we're going to have Van Dam Cruising to come in and redo this and turn it back into a duplex. City staff recommended that we not approve that because it was non-conforming. It didn't fit in the area. It was a duplex. I drove by the property every single day. I thought it was a single family. City staff recommended that we not approve that. Although they said, you know, it's non-conforming or it could stay forever because it was there prior to us saying no duplexes in the area. Because they say that it could stay there does not mean that it will. It's at the mercy of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And those members, when I was on them, we were heavily swayed by city staff. They were the knowledgeable ones. They were the city planners. We weren't. They are heavily swayed by city staff. If city staff says you should not approve this, most likely it will not be approved. If there is a fire, damage, considerable damage, that most likely that building is done. It is gone. Now, one of the points of reference was the school building you guys were talking about, or that vacant lot behind the police station. You know, 80% or you could build something 65 feet tall. I would ask the city staff, how many buildings are 65 feet that have 80% coverage on them today in that area? We're kidding ourselves if we're thinking the Burdick corridor looks anything like Stadium Drive. Stadium Drive is what, 5 lanes wide? You've got massive open space. Stadium Drive and Burdick are 2 different areas. Let's not kid ourselves and use this, you know, night and day references. They're 2 different areas, you know? So we've got 40 seconds here. Mixed-use buildings. So again, I own property on Dutton Street. And currently, I own 3 buildings right next door to each other with plans to buy the 2 residentials and down the line to buy the commercial building that's adjacent to it. Now I heard a little bit of you could build, but and I'm on the north side, so I guess I could build a little higher than 35 feet if I get permission from the city, if they grant it. I don't know. So if in fact I cannot buy that property and build 35 feet, that deal is done. I will not buy from that owner at the price I would have paid today. It does affect values.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir.
John Davis. I own Davis Auto Sales. In 2004, Morton Garage was up for sale on South Westnich. Some of you guys probably remember that. If you're old enough, I'm sure you remember Morton Garage. So I came to the city, and I said, "City, can I sell cars there?" The city said, "If you got the approval from Vine Community, it will be okay with us." Vine Community said no. So I found the building on Burdick and Burr Oak. I came to the city again. The city said, "No problem, you can sell cars there, no problem." So I got my dealer license and everything, I got all set up. I want you to put yourself in my shoes. 10 years ago, it's okay. But now, it's not okay. If you screw up, you're out. It's not fair. Think about the thing now. And the reason people don't come to meetings because we feel we expressing ourselves and you can vote the way the plan wants you to vote anyway. That's what we feel. But the only way we're going to get a crowd in these meetings is when you listen to us. I don't think you listen to it. I'm not badgering you. I'm just saying the system is not set to listen to the small man. The system is set to listen to the person who has the most money in their pocket. I work hard for my building. Like I say, I do things for the community. I just don't want to sell cars. I have friendship. People just come by and just sit down and talk. Kids come by with their bikes. I put air in their bikes. The only place they can get air is my shop, unless they're going to drive all the way down to Crosstown and Weston to get air for their bikes. So now you're saying, well, if you should retire, then you can't sell your business to another car owner because it's a no-no. And things like this is really bothering my mind, that we as minority owners, if 3 minority owners that own these car lots, we all know that. It bothers my mind that when you struggle, you work hard to build something up, and now you're not in conform or legally, whatever you want to call those terms, that bothers my mind. I would suggest that you take those out. I can assure you there will be no more car lots. There's nowhere to put a car lot anyway. You know, it's nowhere to put a car lot on Burdick. It's nowhere down there to put one. But we are the one getting punished for it because we are not in conformity. I don't like that language. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the details, but I would encourage all of you to think about this thing. It doesn't cost you anything to think about it. And sometime when we come to this meeting, allow our voice to be heard. Because right now, you know, We just feel our voice is not heard. That's why these meetings is not for. I know the young lady said she had meetings in Vine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and people came and expressed themselves. But until we feel that people listen to us, we are not going to come to these meetings because we feel that the decision has already been made. It's just not fair. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Tina McClinton, and I live at 310 Lake Street. I live at the property that you was asking, that you asked questions about. My concern with that is I live in a flood zone. I have pictures of, if you guys would like to see them, of all the animals that live in the woods next to me. There's herrings, there's wood ducks, there's foxes, there's deer. I have pictures of all of it. I also have pictures when we got flooded, where the city yards behind in my neighbor's backyard was completely flooded, but the city yards property was completely dry. The college across the street was completely dry. I have pictures of what we have to look at now because of where the college is. My only concern is if they build anything next to me, my property will drown. Because the college is up so high that when it flooded the last time, it flooded really hard to where we couldn't even get out of our neighborhood unless we went through a lot of water. So my concerns is the more you build in my little spot, the worse it's going to be for us homeowners. I've been a resident of Kalamazoo all my life. I work 65 hours a week. I'm a lunch lady at one job, absolutely love it. Been there 16 years, never missed a day. I'm a hard worker. I work at a store at my other job. I love my neighborhood. I love my neighborhood the way it is. I don't care if you make it look nice, but if the more you build in my neighborhood is not going to take away the crime. It's not going to help that whatsoever. My neighborhood is not, my area is a nice area, but when you go a few blocks away, it gets a little rougher as you go on. But the more you build there, the more you bring more people, the more there's going to be more, in my area, flooding. Like I said, I have pictures of where the college was completely dry and all the land around it was completely flooded, including the woods behind my neighbor and my backyard. My backyard was not flooded. The woods made 2 ponds, which saved my yard from getting flooded to where I didn't lose my cars. I lost my furnace and I lost my water heater, and I still have some holes in the basement walls that I have to fix. The water came up through the drains. My water did not come through my yard because the woods saved me. And I do have some pictures if you guys would like to look at them. I would need them back if you don't mind. I thank you for taking the time to look at them, and I thank you for all your questions. And as far as the meeting, I only got one letter, and that was for the Vine Street meeting, and that was if they wanted to hear what you said, they listened. If they didn't want to hear what you said, you were just kind of shoved off and, you know, just, oh, well. I work 2 jobs. It's really hard to keep coming to these meetings and to worry what you're going to do in my neighborhood because I don't want to flood anymore. I'm tired of putting in furnaces. I'm tired of worrying about the water hitting my fuse box. It was 3 blocks from my fuse box this time. Last time, it was 4 blocks from my fuse box. This time, it was 3. And like I said, I couldn't even get out of my neighborhood. People had to come bring me food. I work 2 jobs, so I'm never home, so I need to get out to get something. So I had to walk through all the water at Upjohn Park to meet somebody. My friend, she met me over there, and she brought me groceries and stuff because I couldn't get out of my neighborhood because of all the water all around. And I thank you for your time, and I will give you the pictures. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ross Stancati, and I live at 1030 Edgemore. And I have a problem with this zoning request. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer in this town for a little over 55 years. I'm in my 85th year. And during that time that I've been in the city, I've acquired a number of pieces of real estate, mostly downtown, mostly surrounded by Cedar Street, South Rose Street, South Burdick Street, and Walnut Street, one whole block. And I have built buildings. I've built residential buildings, I've built industrial buildings, and I know what it costs to build. And today, if I wanted to build an apartment downtown Kalamazoo, it would cost me somewhere between $75,000 to $100,000 to build one. And I will tell you that in all of the properties that I own, if you restrict me to the height that you're talking about, I can't build any. And you relegate me to what I presently have, which isn't very good. That's my statement to you, but let me talk to you about somebody else, all right? Hello, my name is 121 Cedar Street, LLC. As this LLC, I own a building known at 121 Cedar Street. It was built as a moose hall. And when I bought it, I tried to make it conform to an office that I, as a lawyer, and my associates could be in. And presently, that building is assessed at a value of somewhere around $400,000. Talk about impacting value. As I say, I'm kind of old, and sometime maybe I ought to quit working and kind of live on what I've built. And so I've had people come, and one person came to my office and made me an offer with regard to my building. And basically what he wanted to do is do what I think, and what realtors have told me, is tear it down. Tear it down and build something that will match the value that's there. Well, I will tell you that you can't build on that piece of property what is necessary in terms of a return to make it work financially. And so this person who was, in fact, talking to me about buying my building came to me recently when, of course, it was in the paper as to what was happening here, and said, listen, if your property is rezoned to C2, I'm not going to buy. I'm not interested anymore. Hello. Hello. My name is South Burdick Street Group. South Burdick Street Group owns property on South Burdick Street. It is a vacant parking lot between the Blue Dolphin and the next building over. And I have the same thing I can tell you with regard to this piece of property. Presently, it's a parking lot, and we're relegated to somewhere around $35 to $45 to $35 per parking space per month. And we're half full, mainly because the city is in competition with us. And so it doesn't pay for itself. It doesn't pay for itself right now, and so something has to be done in terms of building on it. Right across the street, we have a 16-story building. Right across the street. Under this zoning, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Hello. My name is South Point, LLC. And if I can approach, I'd like to give you each something that I have in my hand.
Sir.
No, sir. I am now talking as a different person than I started with. I signed up as 4 different people, 4 different organizations. So I have 4 different minutes for each organization.
Well,
Would you like to
we're not going to do that. Your time has expired. If there's anyone else wanting to address the commission, please step forward. Not gonna do that. Thank you. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Nancy Troff. I live at 264 East Michigan Avenue, and I'm Ross's partner in this particular project. And all I want to say is that this project was endorsed by the City of Kalamazoo in 2008, which is when we intended to build it. And it's your basic urban infill, and it's 40 feet high. So I think it's beautiful, and I think that in Ann Arbor, Rochester, successful cities around here use this kind of project for their urban lots. This would be non-conforming throughout that district, and as far as I'm concerned, it's what we should be looking for. And I think that we're making a mistake being in a hurry here. I think that we want people to live downtown. I like the general idea. I'm not into high rises, but we do want people to live here, and we want them to have nice housing. And by the way, an American Foursquare, I think you guys are probably all familiar with those. Those are about 30 feet high. That's just a single American 2-story Foursquare. So you were really at 35 feet, really not allowing for much. So anyway, food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wanting to address the commission on this item? Seeing no one, commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
I move the adoption of this ordinance.
Moved by Commissioner Urban. I don't hear support. So this item fails. Okay. So I want to just say to the commission and even to staff, I think one of the things that needs to happen is that we really need to think about this in the context of the neighborhood plans. I've heard some of you say that. I also think that you as a commission will struggle over the next 5 years as we deal with Imagine Kalamazoo, master plans, all of these things we put in place, because you're going to have people that agree and disagree, push back here and there. You're going to have decreasing intensity in neighborhoods where you want to do that, but then that rubs against the commercial, this, that, or the other thing. It's a challenge for you, and this is the work ahead. So keep that in mind. Mr. Attorney, do I need to do anything else? No, thank you. Item F, the consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have before you this evening the consent agenda.
Madam Manager, because of the time, could we forego reading, Commissioners, the agenda, consent agenda, since it's consent anyway? We have items F through 8 on the consent agenda. That's items under F. Clerk Boyling, please call the roll.
Do we at least need a motion?
I need a motion, don't I?
So
we have a
moved.
motion to approve the consent agenda, Commissioner Anderson, supported by Vice Mayor. Clerk Boyling.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson? Yes. Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. We are now at G1, adoption of an ordinance. Madam Manager.
Item G1 is adoption of an ordinance to amend certain sections of Chapter 38 and Chapter 28 of the Kalamazoo Code to change the rates charged for water and wastewater services effective January 29, 2018.
Anyone wanting to address this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Mr. Clerk, will you make sure this young lady gets her pictures back to? Oh.
I'll wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cooney, supported by Commissioner Urban. Mr. Attorney?
Commissioners, I suggest there was a Scrivener's error that occurred in the drafting of the ordinance. And in essence, what happened is there are 3 rates for certain solids that are, or chemicals or compounds that are found in the wastewater. And there's a rate to, depending on how saturated the water is with these compounds. And in the draft ordinance, it's measured by cubic meters. It should have been measured by kilograms. The document that's in the packet has been changed to reflect that. And so I would suggest that you make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 38 and Chapter 28, adjusting the rates for charge for water and wastewater services, reflecting the correction of measurement of, and here are the three things: biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD strength, suspended solids, referenced as SS strength, and ammoniacal nitrogen, NH3-N strength from cubic meters to kilograms in the wastewater rate set forth in Chapter 28.
The motioner, will you accept that as the motion?
Yes.
And is there still support?
Yes.
I made the motion, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And if I may go one step further, sometimes when you make amendments on the night you're adopting things, if it's a material change, you have to put it off for another meeting. In my view, this is not a material change. The rates aren't changing. You're just correcting the abbreviation at the top of the column to make it correct. So it's not significant.
Is there discussion? Clerk Borling, the roll, please.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G2, Madam Manager.
Item G2 is the nomination of the following slate of 10 sector representatives for the Foundation for Excellence Board of Directors. Mia Henry as the Affinity Organizations representative for a 2-year initial term. Alyssa Carroll as the Arts Sector representative for a 2-year initial term. Adam McFarland as the Business Banking Sector representative for a 2-year initial term. Vaughn Washington Jr. as the Education Sector representative for a 3-year initial term. Matthew Zurich as the Faith-Based Sector representative for a 1-year initial term. Angela Graham Williams as the Healthcare Sector representative for a 3-year initial term. Jovan Head as the Housing Sector representative for a 1-year initial term. Sandra Calderon Huezo as the Neighborhood 1 representative for a 1-year initial term. Alice Taylor as the Neighborhood 2 representative for a 2-year initial term. And Barbara Miller as Neighborhood 3 representative for a 3-year initial term.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Anyone wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to nominate the sector representatives for the Foundation for Excellence Board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Knott, supported by Commissioner Sykes. Discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
I just want to briefly recognize once again the great work that was done by the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. And in addition, it was not just the Kalamazoo Community Foundation that did this work. The Kalamazoo Community Foundation reached out, formed community-based kind of sector representatives that helped with this whole process, to engage many, many people across the organization and across the community. And I think this, what the slate that has come to us out of that whole process represents the great, great work of another community partner, and really has helped make this part of it easy for us. Maybe the next step that we're going to have later tonight won't be so easy, but it makes this part easy, and it makes me encouraged that we are going to get this board populated and get the work started. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Madam Manager?
Item G3 is the interviewing and electing the at-large city director to the Foundation for Excellence Board of Directors.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Commissioners, we have 6 individuals we'll be interviewing for tonight. You have questions that you came up with before you. There are 6 of them. I propose that commissioners ask those questions. Since there's 7 of us, I will step aside and not ask questions to allow you to do that, if that's okay. And the individuals are James Houston, Nathan Dannison, Jim Carey, Sidney Ellis, Craig DeNoyer, and Dale Hine. Commissioner Anderson?
I was just going to suggest this, but I need to take a quick break. This may go on for a while, and I want my focus to be able to be on what we're doing here and not something else. So at this moment, I hate to leave and miss something, but you know, we have been here for a bit.
We'll take a 5-minute recess, folks. 5. It's 3:38.
Did you get a chance to see them? See all the critters? Thank you. I appreciate you sticking up for them. I don't care if they go down the rounds, but next to the flood. Did you see what the tower around the tower? This is what we look at now. It's that pink note. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you. Number 6.
We are interviewing just so something time marking, how long.
Just item approved.
We are reconvened. The vice mayor just told me we should all be happy we're still here. I guess a meteor crashed in Michigan, and it's all over Facebook, and it missed us. So we can't be all that bad, I guess. Commissioners, the clerk asked me one question, and I know that Commissioner Cunningham has mentioned this to me before. When we interviewed for commissioners, we timed. They had a time limit on each question, but that was 13 or 14 questions. It was, or something like that, 11 questions. I think it was 14 people or something of that nature. And we have a few questions that are meaty. So the question is, are you wanting to time answers or not? You do want to time answers per the vice mayor? So you got to give me a recommendation on how long you want per question. And remember, a couple of them are meaty. Because one, I can see number 2 is like 3 or 4 questions.
And that was, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Urban was waiting.
May I ask, what degree of notice did the candidates get to prepare answers for these questions?
No notice. Commission did not give that direction. We have one commissioner that mentioned that, you Commissioner, at the last meeting, but there wasn't a lot of, everybody else didn't really chime in saying, send them the questions.
We really can't expect to get a very concise answer without people having a chance to prepare. So I think in view of that, it may be perceived as a little bit arbitrary to cut the time down below what is normally would be expected. Although we're going to be having to tolerate some pretty rambling answers when we do it this way. So I just want us to be aware of the pluses and minuses of proceeding with a change.
Vice Mayor?
I support having a time limit. You know, having recently come off the campaign trail, we were expected to answer multifaceted questions in 30 seconds or a minute, depending on the forum. I anticipate that all of these 6 candidates have done their homework. They're probably anticipating something similar to the questions that we're going to ask them, and therefore I support narrowing it down, maybe a minimum, maximum for each question.
So one, I just want to expedite this. Is there a consensus that we want to limit the timing on the questions?
Yes.
There's a consensus of that?
Yes.
Yes. Then someone give me a number.
2 minutes.
2 minutes per Commissioner Cooney. Is 2 minutes acceptable to the commission?
Does that include opening comments?
No, just
No.
for the answers to the questions.
I think if we allow opening comments, it's just going to drag things on. I'd rather have us all make a decision based strictly on the questions that we have before us to minimize the extra variation that can be caused by an ad lib type response that's not scripted, that's not prepared. It may not keep the playing field level. So if we're interested in saving time, I'd say we eliminate the opening statement part.
No, I don't agree with that.
Commissioners? Mr. Sykes?
I don't think it's a good idea to eliminate opening statements. I'm totally comfortable with 2 minutes per comment. I imagine that some comments or answers probably won't reach 2 minutes. If I remember from when I ran, a minute is a really long time. Doesn't seem like it until you actually start answering those questions. So I guess that's where I'm at, but I'm sort of ambivalent too and open to your guys' thoughts.
Opening comments, folks? Yes. Yea or nay? Yes, 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 yes. Consensus is yes. Commissioner Anderson?
So a question, are we limiting opening comments at all? Are those, were people told that they had any specific time for opening comments?
Yes, asking you. They were told to. Okay, everything's 2 minutes. Any other questions? Statements? We'll take the first candidate.
Bring them in.
So, Commissioner Sykes, you'll have the first question. Commissioner Anderson, you'll have the second question. Commissioner Cooney, you'll have the third question. Vice Mayor, you'll have the fourth question. Commissioner Cunningham, you'll have the fifth. And Commissioner Urban, you will have number 6. Is that okay? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners.
We wanted to give you some time to make an opening statement. We want to thank you first for being here and your interest in doing this most important work in this new realm and adventure we're all on. So we appreciate you more than we can say. And the floor
Thank you.
is
It's
yours.
an honor to be here. Well, let me say that I came to Kalamazoo over 50 years ago, matter of fact, in 1962, to attend the Grand Institution of Western Michigan University. And during those years of attendance at Western, I became acquainted with the community of Kalamazoo. And inevitably, if you've been around Kalamazoo for any length of time, you can't help but fall in love with the city, and that's what I did. So during these intervening years, even though I've traveled here and there, I always have come back to Kalamazoo. But when you love a city, you want to look to see what's best for that city, what's best for its citizens. And that's what I've tried to do all these years. I've tried to be a participant in many activities in the community. I've tried to be on boards that were supportive of the city and the activities and the people. I've come back here because I'm very hopeful for what this new board is going to be doing for the city. I see the potential that it has. From what I see, there will be many people who have great gifts to offer to this board, and I feel perhaps I'm one of those people. So I feel that the experience, the knowledge that I've gained over my career, both in the corporate world and banking, and as a creator of a financial institution, has given me some particular insights as to how to go about addressing many of the needs, especially financial needs and investment needs in this community. As I've lived in this city, I've been very concerned about the plight of many of our citizens, especially those citizens in the
Sir, you're at about 2 minutes, and so we're gonna, I know it passes fast. Sorry about that. And
okay.
Certainly what's going to happen is we have about 6 questions. Each commissioner will ask you a question, but for me, since there's 6, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions. I should have said that earlier, and I apologize. And so we're going to start with Commissioner Sykes. And some of these questions are multifaceted. We'll let you do your best in determining your answer. Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you. All right, first question. Have you read the FFE Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws? What is your understanding of the role of the FFE Board and the differences between that role and the role of the City Commission in the FFE process?
I have not read every one of those. I've read an overview of the purpose of the board, and that's where I've left it for the time being.
Commissioner Anderson? Yeah, it's okay, he's got it.
Microphone.
Microphone, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, otherwise known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? What is your understanding of the IK 2025 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the Foundation for Excellence?
I did not participate, but I'm broadly cognizant of it. From what I know of it, I think that there may be some similarities between the mission of this new board and the purpose of that prior commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooney?
Okay, Jim, what would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
Oh, man, there's so many things I'd like for Kalamazoo
2
to be
minutes to do it.
in 10 years. I would like to see Kalamazoo establish a better base for business to operate here. I would also like to see Kalamazoo offering more opportunities for employment by people in the lower economic bracket in our city. I would see more support by the city to offer different types of alternative education for its citizens. I would like to see more services provided for people who don't have social services and things of that nature. Probably one of the most important things is I'd like to see something done about the infrastructure, namely the streets in Kalamazoo, because transportation and ways of transporting is very important to business and very important to the overall well-being of the city. So those are some of the things I'd like to see happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Houston, what do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? What skills, abilities, and relationships and experiences will you bring to the board? And finally, what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
Well, I would like to see the board be a partner with the City Commission and together looking at the best way of using financial resources and better ways to utilize those resources and helping them continue to grow and take in a variety of different issues that will be facing the city as we go forth. I feel that my expertise, my financial expertise, will be better suited to helping the city do that, to helping the board administer its duties and overseeing, being a fiduciary in a way to serve the issues of the city. I've had a lot of experience. I've helped found a credit union that serves low-income people. I'm very an expert in budgeting and helping people set up financial schedules and things of this nature, how to best, looking at ways to best apply funds and manage funds, which is one of the main duties that this board would have in its requirements.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, the clock. Commissioner Cunningham?
Mr. Houston, in your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the City Commission should be working to address?
Well, like I've said before, I think one of the big issues has to do with infrastructure. I think it's very important. And I say that because here recently, here in Kalamazoo, I've been caught in traffic jams that heretofore, it didn't happen that much before. But I like for the city to look at things like affordable housing. When you look around and you see the many people who can't afford housing, they're in apartments or they're in low rent places that I wouldn't want to stay in. It's a crisis, I believe, in the city of Kalamazoo, not having enough affordable housing. So that is one of the infrastructure and affordable housing are two of the primary things I feel the city should put some emphasis on.
Commissioner Urban.
One of the announced goals of the Foundation for Excellence is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order. How should we work to accomplish this? Well,
Poverty comes about because people don't have livable employment. It comes about because people don't have education that will allow them to gain employment. So I think we can use a lot of the resources that will be given to the city to maybe look at ways that we can offer training for people who need that training so they can qualify for different jobs that will help them raise themselves out of these non-livable wage situations. So I think that would be an area where a lot of finances, a lot of funds can be well spent. So I think with those kinds of resources, we can very well look at these creative opportunities to help people rise out of poverty and hopefully stem the flow of generational poverty.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The rest of the time is yours. You may use it as you see fit. Oh, he changed the... Go ahead.
Well, when I heard about this new Foundation of Excellence, and I kind of read some of the various purposes of it, one of the things that came to mind was we're lucky in this city to have people who are great philanthropists, people who are willing to give back to the city. And when I saw that they were going to invite citizens, especially an at-large citizen, to be a part of that, I figured that this is something I really wanted to do. This is something that's hitting to my heart. This is something that's in sync with where my thoughts and my feelings are. You know, a great city is no more greater than the lowest of its citizens. When you raise the economic status and the well-being of those the lowest among you, you raise all of those above you. And this is why I want to be a part of this new board that's being formed. Because I feel that as a part of it, I can help generate some ideas that will hopefully be beneficial to the city and to our community. So hopefully, you know, if I'm lucky enough to be part of the board, I hope to be an active member and hopefully be very creative in my contributions to this board. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
We can start. Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Dennison. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. How are you, sir?
I am good. We want to thank you for certainly your interest in doing this work and your interest in our city. And tonight we have each commissioner, there are 6 questions that will be asked of you. They're multifaceted. There's a clock there, and it's going to count down from 2 minutes, and you get a yellow and a red. And your previous candidate, I'm sorry I didn't say that to you. My apologies. And we were going to allow for you to have an opening statement of 2 minutes, so you'll get counted down on that. And we wish you luck. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Nathan Dannison. I'm the 29th senior minister of the First Congregational Church here in Kalamazoo, one of the first churches in our city. It was organized the same time as our sister churches, Baptist Church, Presbyterian Church, Methodist Church, and St. Luke's. So we all get to claim to be the oldest church in town. I am a 3rd generation WMU Bronco and a 7th generation West Michigander. My ancestors settled in Grand Rapids and Allegan. I'm honored to be here. I want to thank each of you individually. I want to thank you for the personal investments that you're making and the sacrifices you've made out of your personal lives to be a part of this commission. I am very much aware that sitting up there is oftentimes much more nerve-wracking and exhausting than sitting out here. And so I appreciate the sacrifices that you've made. When I first learned about the Foundation for Excellence as a concept, I remember my first sense was that it would be really exciting to be involved in raising those funds. We were in the midst of a fairly sizable capital campaign at our church. We were informed, well, I was told when I came on staff 5 years ago that we'd need to raise about $900,000 for some maintenance on the sanctuary walls, and was told by our first consultant that we would be lucky if we raised $750,000 and would need to plan to borrow the rest. We didn't hire that consultant. Ultimately, we raised $1.8 million to this date, and we're pushing forward with another $800,000 this year to do some community improvements. And so the church itself exists for the benefit of the community. Part of my call agreement with that congregation is that I will practice my ministry publicly and that I will give of myself as much as I ask my congregants to give of their time. And so I hope that I can be helpful and useful in this process, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, sir. We will start with Commissioner Urban.
Okay, here we go. Reverend Dennison, here's our first question. Have you, actually there's two questions buried in this one question. Have you read the Foundation for Excellence Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws?
I have.
Second question in that first is, what is your understanding of the role of the FFE board and the differences between that role and the role of the City Commission in the FFE process?
Sure. I understand the role of the FFE board to oversee the fundraising process, the raising of the endowment itself, its investment strategies and values, and I understand that the board is to be separated, insulated from the ways in which that money is spent. I want to be clear, one of the reasons that I support the Foundation for Excellence is because it places the investment strategy of the funds in the hands of the constituents. You all will be running political campaigns based on the decisions that you make about the way that these funds are invested. That's what will give our democracy its feedback mechanism for these funds. It will not be a process that's decided in some board room by a board of individuals, but rather by the electorate themselves via you, our elected officials. I have to say, on a personal note, as the head of an organization that has itself a fairly significant endowment, one of the most rewarding parts of my job is helping us vision our values into life by how that endowment is invested. Our investment strategies mirror our values, and I'm keenly interested in being a part of this board so that I can help our investment portfolio mirror our values as a community. That's sort of where my interest is at. I trust all of you implicitly with your ideas about how best to use the revenue from this endowment to benefit our city.
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham.
Mr. Dennison, did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, also known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? And what is your understanding of the IK 2025 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the FFE?
I did participate to a lesser extent. I was a part of the visioning process when I was a lead organizer with the Arcus Foundation. It was a previous visioning process. I think it was like Kalamazoo 2020, and we were doing it in like 2010. So I backed off of this one a little bit, but we did distribute surveys to the members of our congregation and to the various different civic groups that use our building. I took a survey. I made sure that everybody I knew took a survey. And I did go to a couple of interesting, they were like talkback sessions with some individuals. It was at the city center. The way in which I see the foundation aligning itself with the vision is especially in areas of youth investment and alleviating poverty. I know that those are two major visions. I have my own ideas about how to reduce homelessness in our community, but that was the area in which I was most impressed with the visioning process, and frankly, it's an area where the direct investment of dollars oftentimes can make the biggest impact.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Dennison, what would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
In 10 years, I want the city of Kalamazoo to be the first city in Michigan to have officially eliminated homelessness in its city. I want it to be a city that has a majority public safety department that hires internal to the city itself with public safety officers from the city. I want to see us as a city that is driven by small investment, small business, small entrepreneurs. My work as the president of the Kalamazoo Nonprofit Advocacy Coalition has focused on getting new nonprofits and small businesses the resources that they need to get their foot in the door, to get their concepts off the ground. I think that we can be an incubator not only for small businesses and entrepreneurs, but for new nonprofits. I'm a person who works for a nonprofit. I believe that nonprofits can change the world. It's really hard to start a nonprofit. I want us to focus on incubation strategies for these as well. I want us to be a bike-friendly city. I live downtown. I work downtown. My child's daycare facility is downtown. I walk everywhere. And somebody bought me a bike last year, and I love it. And I know that there's more that we can do to become a more walkable city. Finally, I want us to be a city that doubles down on our investment in the the education of our kids, especially in the public schools. My child Joe is going to grow up KPS. She's going to be a Promise Scholar. Hopefully she's going to be a fourth-generation Bronco. We'll see. But I believe that we can do more to mentor our Promise qualified KPS students into vocational education and college programs.
Okay, Pastor Dennison, there's three parts to this question. I'm going to read them all, and you can run with it. So, what do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? What skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? And what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
Sure. I want to limit my response to that first question because I know that the board itself is going to be doing a lot of work in developing its identity based on the Articles of Incorporation. I'll say currently I serve as the president of the Kalamazoo Nonprofit Advocacy Coalition, which again, as I said before, seeks to empower nonprofits through real estate and other investments. I am the vice chair of the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeals Board, CIPSRAB, where we work closely with public safety. And I am also a member of the Kalamazoo County Community Action Tripartite Advisory Board, where we try to help make sure that money gets where it's needed when it's available. I've very much enjoyed working with all three of those organizations, and so I am very well versed in board work. I'm also a Congregationalist minister, and you don't get much more democratic board work when it comes to that. One of the things that I want to do, as I said before, I'm interested very much in that, to make sure that our investment strategies mirror our values as a community. I also want to help engage small givers, small donors in the raising of the revenue, and also the church community. I believe that our churches, our communities of faith, have something to give to this. I kind of envision a campaign of gifts amongst our faith communities. I'm thinking like a rate of 1% annual giving per faith family over the course of 10 years, based on this idea of a tithe, as a form of perhaps payment in lieu of taxes, a way that we can invest in the foundation to give back for the gifts that we've been given with our tax exemptions. I think that through this process, we as churches can demonstrate our love for Kalamazoo in a very tangible way. And I would like to see a brick or a plaque or whatever that just says the people of faith of Kalamazoo to Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Anderson. Thank you. Thanks for coming. In some ways you may have answered this, but we'll ask it again for clarity. In your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the City Commission should be working to address?
I think that from my work downtown, from what I've seen, the biggest issues are the barriers that get people, that prevent them from reaching their dreams. So we have this amazing program, the Kalamazoo Promise, and I work one-on-one with students through Big Brothers Big Sisters as a big brother myself, but I also work with the students in our church, and I know that there are some of them for whom college enrollment's not a big deal. I was one of those kids. My parents were college professors. I don't even remember applying to college. It was taken care of. It was part of our family culture. There's kids out there, though, I'm working with them, and nobody's telling them that it's your junior year. You need to be ready for tests. And nobody's telling them this is where you find enrollment forms on websites. We need to mobilize a cadre of assistants to get these kids enrolled in the programs that are going to help them. Same is true with starting a small business. Same is true with starting a nonprofit. It's not as hard as we make it. It seems impossible, but there are so many resources and people out there in the city who can take that dream that you've got in your garage that you want to, whatever your nonprofit vision is, and help you incorporate, give you an office space, give you a printer, Wi-Fi access, things like that. We need to turn our city into an innovation center that translates dreams into realities for people. The next biggest challenge I think that we face is we have still failed in many ways to deal with the legacy of the segregation that was imposed on our city in the 1950s and 60s, primarily through housing and access to affordable housing, but also just through the way that our city was built, the way that the pipelines were put in, the way the streets were put in, the way that the businesses were organized into districts. We've got to do something to address these issues. And it's not just economic disparity. There's still a great deal of racism at work that needs to be addressed in a forthright way, transparently.
Commissioner Sykes.
All right, last question. One of the announced goals of the FFE is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order. How should we work to accomplish this?
I agree it's a tall order. I think in some ways it's bordering on naive, given the lip service that I think has been paid to this sort of concept in the past. Personally, I think it's an issue of economic disparity, and I think that until we confront some real powers and principalities and positions of high authority in our land, this is going to be something that could be too large for us to tackle on our own. However, for whatever reason, we've been given a few tools that we can use, that we can mobilize to address this. The Kalamazoo Promise is a huge one. I think we could be doing more with that, honestly. But I also think that we need to lower some of the barriers, as I said before, to turning ideas into action. I've seen so many people come through our building who, they want to start we have 4 different acting groups right now that are doing rehearsals and performances in our church. We let them use our space free of cost, free of charge. Our church is the only church that offers 100% of its space free of cost or expectation. There's no fees to use our building. They said this is incredible for them because rehearsal space is so expensive for new acting groups trying to get off the ground. So Queer Theater Kalamazoo is doing performances in our church basement. And people are showing up. They're well attended. They're selling tickets. They're making money. Someday they're going to move into a theater, you know? We need more of that. We need to develop community spaces where we say to you, no, there's no cleaning deposit, there's no fees, there's no cost. The only cost is the investment of your time. Invest your time. And we've got to stop, sort of, as I said before, paying lip service to this idea that there aren't systems in place that are systematically preventing people from getting out of poverty. Because I'll tell you, there are people who get extremely wealthy in this town on the backs of poor people. You've got check cashers, you've got rent-to-own companies, you've got lots of people that get rich when other people are poor. And we've got to address some of that as well.
Well, Mr. Dennison, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we appreciate your interest in this work, and certainly all the things that you have said tonight. You're welcome to stay in the audience, or I'm sure Mr. Brown will help you find where you're headed next. So, again,
thank you all. I know this takes up a lot of your time, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Perry.
Good evening.
We want to say thank you for stepping forward and for your interest in this work, this new journey that we're on. Tonight is probably not typical for everyone to sit before a community interview, but we appreciate your willingness to do that. We have 6 questions for you. Each of the commissioners will ask a question. You'll have 2 minutes to answer that question.
Oh my.
And then you will have, you'll have 2
pressure.
minutes for an opening statement as well. And the floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, I'll try to be quick with these 2 minutes. I'd like to begin by thanking each of you, certainly, and actually all who have been involved in this selection process. I understand this is a very important moment in Kalamazoo's history, and it's a pleasure to be here and be a part of that. As you learned from my application, I've actually lived and worked from Kalamazoo for about 11 years. As an independent consultant, as a strategist, one of the things I've been spending most of my professional life doing is helping make connections and assure a level of alignment. What I mean by that is making sure that you're aligning data with strategy, you're aligning vision with operations, and more importantly, in this case, perhaps, you're aligning organizational vision and desire with donor intent. While my work with community banks and credit unions has taken me to a lot of different places in this country, I call Kalamazoo my home. I've had an opportunity to work with several institutions here. I've had an opportunity to work with CARES, with Heritage Community of Kalamazoo, with Fontana Chamber Arts, with Western Michigan University, and others. Now, my work has taken me to a lot of communities that are facing similar challenges to those here in Kalamazoo, but none have come up with such an innovative solution as the Foundation for Excellence. My interest in serving on this initial board of the Foundation stems from a desire to be of service and an understanding that the viability of our community depends on bold initiatives just like this. Many people will ask me about why I moved from Chicago to Kalamazoo. I'll simply say I fell in love. First, with a man that had already called Kalamazoo his home. Second, with a Frank Lloyd Wright designed community that I
Thank you. Commissioner Sykes?
Yes. All right. First question. Have you read the FFE Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws? What is your understanding of the role of the FFE Board and the differences between that role and the role of the City Commission and the FFE process?
Yes, I have read the Articles of Incorporation. My understanding is that the FFE will have the opportunity to present to the City Commission various recommendations. We will have primary responsibility of making sure that the Foundation's activities are completed, but we will not be in the position of actually dictating the Commission's actions.
Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you. Scott, I want to give you a second. There we go. Did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, otherwise known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? What is your understanding of the IK 2025 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the Foundation for Excellence?
It's my understanding, I did participate with the surveys. It is my understanding that there is a lot embedded in that document because of the amount of citizen involvement in that process that will inform and shape some of the decisions that the Foundation will be making and the issues that will concern the Foundation moving forward.
Jim, what would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
I would like to see the city of Kalamazoo be a place of great opportunity, of equal opportunity. I would like to see the city of Kalamazoo be a place that can compete with communities both larger and smaller, both for small business and for new citizens, new families, young people, to actually see that there's a quality of life here that is like no other.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Perry, what do you understand your role to be on the FFE board, and what skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? And finally, what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
My understanding is that in this particular role, my role will be subject to the commission in terms of appointment, that it will be either 1 or 3 years, that it will be a working board. There will be subcommittees, there will be various activities in order to drive the Foundation forward. One of the things I've come to understand is that my expertise in fundraising, marketing, and strategy development would be an asset to that inaugural board. I also know that fundraising in and of itself is not an individual sport, it's a team effort. And so the ability of the Foundation to secure the funds and manage that foundation is going to require everyone working together.
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham.
Mr. Perry, in your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the City Commission should be working to address?
There are so many issues. Certainly among them are issues of poverty and reducing poverty. There are infrastructure issues in our city. And quite frankly, as I mentioned earlier, I believe our ability to compete against communities our size and those smaller and larger for talent, for small business, we have to have the environment here that encourages innovation, that supports business and economic growth. There's a lot on your plate, and I know that the foundation is going to play an important role in making sure that all of the issues that the city faces are front and center.
Commissioner Urban?
Mr. Perry, my question is, of the announced goals of the FFE, one of the announced goals of the FFE is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order. How should we work to accomplish this?
Oh, save that one for last, did you? Generational poverty is an issue that communities all over the country are having to face. Part of it has to do with the commitment of both the nonprofit sector, the government sector, and the for-profit sector to work together to make sure that there are opportunities available. You know, one of the largest issues, I think, is in the education of our entire community, making sure that they have the skill sets they need to compete in the workforce, to be functional citizens. And so it really is going to take all major sectors to work together, and I see the foundation playing a role in facilitating those conversations.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Perry, that was the last one, that hard one there. Again, thank you for stepping forward as a member of this community and your interest in this work. We know that, I should have said you do have a minute. If you wanted to make a closing, you could do that. I'm sorry, I meant to say that to you. You got a minute left.
I will say this one thing that was part of my original comments. My ties to the community may not be long, or they may not be as deep as some, but Kalamazoo is likely going to be my home for the rest of my life, and its future is of great concern and of great interest to me, and it would be an honor to be a part of this activity.
Well, again, thank you for being here tonight and your interest. I think Mr. Brown's there to help you head to whatever's next tonight.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Good evening, Mr. Ellis.
Good evening.
Welcome. First, thank you for your interest in this work and this opportunity, this new journey that we are on. We are very honored with all of you folks that have stepped forward and wanting to serve this city. To give you a little lay of the ground tonight, we have 6 questions that will be asked. You'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions. We're also going to allow for a 2-minute opening statement as well. And the clock is there, and it'll tick down, and it'll go yellow and then red. That'll give you your indications that your time is coming to a close. And with that, the floor is yours for your 2-minute statement.
All right. Well, as you all know, my name is Sid Ellis. I've been here since 1981, and within, I would say, 4 years after that, I began serving in some capacity in the city in some way. And so I am a servant of the community. And through my service, that's how I became a leader. I did not look to be a leader. I did not search to be a leader. I did not even desire leadership, but I would serve and then lead, serve and then lead. And so that's what I stand on. I'm a community servant. So I'm here for the community. I'm here to give a voice to the community and most of all, listen to the community and find out what the needs are and what we can do as a committee or as a board. And so here I am to do that. I feel that I'm a connector. I connect people to people, people to organizations, and organizations to people. And I've been doing so for over 20 years now in that capacity. And I feel that I can just bring a love for the city to the particular board here. And I believe, I'm sure all the other candidates would say the same, but having not been born and raised in the city of Kalamazoo, I come passionately because I have decided to love the city of Kalamazoo. It wasn't brought upon me. I've decided to stay here and work towards things that I've done within the city of Kalamazoo to do so because I love the city, because I've grown to love the city. I have 2 boys, one at Western Michigan University and one now at Lloyd Norris, and I want to help make the city a better place for them, their friends, and the community.
Thank you. Commissioner Urban.
First one has got 2 parts. One is has a pretty short answer, probably. I'll read it. Have you read the Foundation for Excellence Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws? And what is your understanding of the role of the FFE board and the differences between that role and the role of the City Commission in the FFE process?
No, I have not. And no, I do not know the difference.
Okay.
Commissioner Cunningham.
All right, Mr. Ellis, this question has 3 parts. Did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, also known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? What is your understanding of the IK 25 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the FFE?
I did not participate. I did review the material, and for what I could ascertain is that the vision that the city has set forth with the several components would be excelled by the FFA.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Ellis, what would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
I would like the city in Kalamazoo in 10 years to be a go-to city for how to, define ways to assist the youth development and how to bring a diverse group of people together. I believe that the city of Kalamazoo is a very diverse city, but you can't always see that. And I would like people to be able to look at the city and see how diverse it is, not just by people that's in leadership positions, but the community at large.
Thank you. Commissioner Queen?
Mr. Ellis, there's 3 parts to this question, so you can handle it whatever way you want. So, what do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? What skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? And what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
Could you ask those 3 questions again, please?
I can. What do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? What skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? What will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
I don't have a full understanding of what the role would be. The skills that I would bring would be strategic planning, organizational development, collaboration, And I think that I will add definitely through my connections with people and organizations within the city. I feel that the board would be better because of me, because of those things, because I'm a collaborator, because I'm able to connect people together, and I'm able to work with a diverse group of people. I'm able to communicate with a diverse group of people. And I think above all, I'm able to bridge the gap between people individually. A lot of the work that I've done within the city has been that, and that is bridging young people with older people, various races with each other, and a lot through the arts community is the way I've done that. And I think that because I'm able to communicate with people from various backgrounds, I'm able to bring those people together.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the City Commission should be working to address?
I'm not sure the City Commission can address the biggest issues. And one of the biggest issues that I think is unemployment in the city of Kalamazoo and the opportunities that are in Kalamazoo. I'm just going to say I challenge some of the large organizations that when I go into a building, it takes me a long time to see a person with color. And I'm not sure what the City Commission could do about that in terms of what the City Commission can do in terms of whether directly, let me put it that way. Indirectly, what are the reasons for that? There may be because of lack of opportunities. There may be because of lack of understanding of how people of color what they need to do to apply for these jobs, what skills they need for these jobs, and is the opportunity there? And so I see people of color in large businesses. I won't doubt that. But at the same time, I don't see enough. In some businesses, it takes me a long time to see a person of color, and that's a problem. I see that as a problem. And I see as a problem that a lot of cars are leaving Kalamazoo to go outside the city. And that means they're leaving, they're working here, and they're leaving to go somewhere else. And I have an issue with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you for that. Last question. One of the announced goals of the FFE is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order. How should we work to accomplish this?
I believe that generational poverty is due to a lack of education. That's not the only issue, but I think that that's one of the main issues. But in connection with that, that lack of education starts at an early age. We have pre-K programs here in the Kalamazoo area, yet when I go into the schools, I still see issues with young people who have a problem with learning, who have a problem with communicating, who have a problem with respecting authority, who have a problem with the basic things such as standing in line. And so I think that in terms of education, those pre-K programs have to be on a broader spectrum. I'm not sure if some of those kids that I'm seeing in the school system have not been had that opportunity to be in these pre-K programs, but I would also say that the other issue that arises is the lack of understanding in their parents and how to assist them. A lot of things happen in the school system. Kalamazoo Public Schools is a great system. My boys have gone through that, but the one thing that I do know that it starts at home, and a lot of our parents are intimidated by the school system because of their lack of education. And so how do we help them help their students? I think that that's one of the major problems is helping the parents help educate the parents or help bring awareness to the parents and help empower them so that they feel comfortable enough to work with the school system.
Mr. Ellis, you have about 20 seconds if you have any final thoughts.
Well, I think that the opportunity that the city of Kalamazoo has is awesome. Like the promise, we can very much take advantage of it, and that's the thing is, we have to take advantage of it, and we have to come together to take advantage of it. The promise is a great thing, but many people are lacking because they're not.
Well, thank you for your interest. We appreciate you, and have a good evening. Mr. Urban, we'll start with you. Oh, no, we start with Commissioner Sykes. I'm sorry. Almost took that away from you. I know you're probably thinking it doesn't really matter. And I read your nonverbal. Good evening, Mr. Denoyer.
Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I am good. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your interest in this work, this new journey we're on. We know it's been a long night for all the candidates, so we thank all of them for being here. Just to give you a little
I canceled my dinner reservation, so you're good.
To give you a little lay of the land, we have 6 questions for you. You'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions. We also are allowing for a 2-minute opening statement. The clock is there. It will count down, and you'll see yellow and red. That'll give some indication of where you are. And again, thank you for being here, and you have the floor.
Well, thank you for the privilege of being here. My name's Craig Denoyer, and I've been a resident of Kalamazoo for a long time. To think about how I wanted to start, rather than talk about qualifications, I thought maybe I'd prefer to talk about an experience that I had that I think is similar to maybe what we're facing with the Foundation of Excellence. 20 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that started Southwest Michigan First. And I learned a number of lessons from that effort, and I'll just go through them very quickly. First is you needed resources. And obviously with the foundation, that has started and started well. But I will always tell you, you'll never feel like you have enough resources no matter what. And as a result, it's very important for you to be laser focused on your mission. And if you're successful, you need to be even more laser focused, because anybody who has a problem is going to come see you and want to make their problem yours. So that's very important. The third thing is you need a fantastic board to stay on mission and keep the team accountable. The fourth thing is you need to be you need good partnerships. You need to play well with others in the sandbox, because you won't be able to do it alone. And finally, you need a community that's willing to adapt and willing to come alongside your effort to be successful. And perhaps the last one is the most important one. So I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Sykes.
Okay. Have you read the FFE Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws? What is your understanding of the role of the FFE Board and the differences between that role and the role of the City Commission in the FFE process?
The answer to the first question is no. I know that the overall goals for the foundation are to lower the tax burden in Kalamazoo, to shore up the city's budget, and to have also to have I've got it written down here, so because without my glasses I'm doing a terrible job. But finally, the part that I think the foundation board will have the most impact on is the monies, the $10 million that's first set aside, making the priorities on how that is to be spent, and to have its most impact to improve the quality of living in Kalamazoo.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is multi-part. Also, did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, otherwise known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? And what is your understanding of the IK 2025 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the Foundation for Excellence?
No, and as a result, I probably can't answer the last one.
Commissioner Cooney.
Mr. Denoyer, this is one part. What would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
A place where my children want to stay.
Great.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? And what skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? And finally, what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
Well, I think I touched on that in my opening statement. I think if I were chosen to be part of the board, I think I see myself as being a consensus builder. I have I think, a fairly strong knowledge of Kalamazoo, not only because I've lived here all but college years and a couple of years other than that. I think the experience of leading Southwest for a long time helps with that. And so I think really that the concept of tying, because I think focus will be a really important thing for this foundation, to get everybody agreed on what the first things are that you're going to want to do, and then don't leave that until it's done.
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham.
Mr. Denoyer, in your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the city commission should be working to address?
Well, I think this. I think you're trying to do that. You have to live within your means. You have to provide an environment for a safe environment for your citizens, a place where companies want to locate. That's what I've always viewed. The city's role is to create the environment to let the private sector thrive and its citizens thrive. And that would be my short answer.
Commissioner Urban.
Mr. Denoyer, one of the announced goals of the Foundation for Excellence is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order.
Mm-hmm.
How should we work to accomplish this?
Well, I think that's where the comment I made of building partnerships is going to come in, because there is no one easy answer. If there was an easy answer, I think not only would everybody would try to do it. And I know in the Bible it says the poor you'll have with you always, but that doesn't mean we don't fight to figure out how to do the best we can with where we are now. And I think that is going to take. I was talking to, not to name drop here, but I was talking to the Lieutenant Governor, and one of the things that they were talking about was early reading. Your skills by the time you're 4 years old and in third grade. And so you say, well, how do you do that? And he said, well, we're trying to pilot program in Flint. And what we're doing is we're taking everybody who's touching that child, who has a chance to touch that child, wherever the governmental agency is. We're putting them all in one building. And we're not putting signs on the door, we're just solving the problem. So if your problem is over here, you go see that person, and it's all one-stop shopping. And apparently the results that they're beginning to see are significant. I think that's the sort of thing you're going to have to do here. You aren't going to be able to function well if you're worried about taking credit for the result. You're going to have to partner well with others, and where they're strong, bring them in, and where you're strong, hopefully you'll lead.
Thank you. That's good.
Well, that was the final question. You do have about 15 seconds if you have anything else.
No, we were doing over-under in the room there, how long it would take us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your interest. Commissioner Urban will be here.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Heim.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Good to see you. Last but not least.
Well, we thank you for your patience and your going through this. We, just for the audience's sake, we flipped coin or randomly drew names, and that's how it aligned. So alphabet didn't help you this time, and
it's fine.
You got the short end. But we appreciate you being here and your interest in this work, this new journey that we're on as a city commission, and certainly staff and all those that live in our community. Just to give you a lay of the land tonight, we have 6 questions. Each of the 6 commissioners will be asking a question. Some of them are multifaceted questions. You have 2 minutes to answer that question or those questions. Well, 2 minutes for each question. And then we'll also have a 2-minute opening statement opportunity for you as well. The indicator there tells you what time it is, and yellow tells you the time is getting a little dark, and red tells you it's real dark.
Time to cut it off. Got
it. And with that, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, we have 2 things I need to speak to initially here. One's about the passion for Kalamazoo, and that's an easy one for me. 40 years ago, my wife and I took a trip around the country to find a place to move, a smaller city from the one we were living in Ohio. We visited cities all over this country. We ended up choosing the city of Kalamazoo to move to. And that was 40 years ago, and it's one of the best decisions we ever made. I've lived in the city, of course, for 40 years. I've been a homeowner for 38 years in the city. We have 3 children. All of them graduated from Kalamazoo Public Schools. We have 5 degrees from Western Michigan University in our family, 2 undergraduate degrees and 3 graduate degrees. So Kalamazoo has given us an incredible victory. So we're really happy to be here. In terms of what I can bring to the board, I think the main piece here is that I bring broad and diverse roles and responsibilities to this activity. When I came to town, I owned a small business, so I had a small business experience for a few years. I was worked on a neighborhood board and served as the youth worker for the Oakwood neighborhood. I taught school on occasion. I was an adjunct professor at the Western Michigan University. But my main career was in the public sector, where I worked for the Kalamazoo County Health and Community Services Department, where I was the deputy director and the director of the agency. We were the public health department at that time. I oversaw the Area Agency on Aging. I oversaw the Caravan Transportation Program, the County Dental Clinic, the Community Action Agency, and other programs associated with the County Health Department. I also worked for the KCTA, the Kalamazoo County Transportation.
It's okay. It's all right. We're going to start with Commissioner Urban.
Yes. Your first question is, have you read the Foundation for Excellence Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws? And what is your understanding of the role of the Foundation Board and the difference between that role and the role of the City Commission in the FFE process?
Yes, I have reviewed the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws, and I see the role of the Foundation as a fiduciary role, but also to help guide the City Commission in decisions they make about spending and utilizing the dollars available. The Commission is the ultimate decider, in the end, we have a very important role, but as a foundation, we become somewhat autonomous over a period of time. But we can hire an executive director if we so chose, again, approved by the county, by the city commission. So I see those as the main roles for the foundation and in its partnership with the city commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham?
Mr. Hine, this is a three-part question. Did you participate in Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, also known as IK 2025? In what ways did you participate? What is your understanding of the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 strategic vision and the relationship between this vision and the work of the FFE?
Well, the answer to the first part is no, I did not participate in that. Having read through some of the briefs on the Imagine 2025, you know, it's a goal-setting, strategic planning of a document that will assist the city and the foundation in achieving its goals and to look for stability for the city in a variety of ways, economically and geographically, et cetera. So I see that as the main function.
Vice Mayor?
Yes. Mr. Hine, what would you like the city of Kalamazoo to be in 10 years?
Well, I have watched the city grow for the last 40 years, and it's been a positive growth all that time. And I want it to be a city that strives for equal opportunity for all of its residents. I want it to be a place where families can grow and thrive, where businesses can grow and thrive. I mean, there's a lot of ideal goals that I'd like to see it reach. But in terms of being a quality living environment for its citizens and a quality environment for its businesses.
Commissioner Queen?
Well, Mr. Hine, there's three parts to this question. So, what do you understand your role to be on the FFE board? What skills, abilities, relationships, and experiences will you bring to the board? And what will the FFE be better able to accomplish as a result of your participation on the board?
Well, my role with the foundation, I can actually continue in my opening remarks because that's what I kind of had in mind before I had to stop. But I've spent my entire career working in collaborative problem-solving activities in this community, whether it be with the county's activities and the county's Human Services Department or all the volunteer activities that I've done. I have knowledge of a broad range of services in this community, whether it be public health or mental health or community action or transportation or dental services, you name it, I have been involved with it. I've been involved with the Public Housing Commission at some point in its early embryonic stages. And so I bring a long history of collaborative knowledge in this community in terms of service delivery. Help me with the other parts, Commissioner.
So you did most of them, I think. And what do you think? What will the board be better able to accomplish with you being on it?
Well, you know, I think I'm a good listener, and I'm a person who has spent a lot of time trying to work strategically. I'm a strong advocate, so I'll be an advocate for all the folks, all the individuals and folks in need in our community. My experience is in human service delivery and working with folks in poverty, working with folks with disabilities. So I bring that knowledge and that experience, and I think that will help the board.
Commissioner Anderson?
Mr. Hine, in your opinion, what are the biggest issues facing the city of Kalamazoo that the City Commission should be working to address?
Well, I live on Oakland Drive, and I would like to see the roads be a little bit better, but I think that's probably par for the course. You've probably heard that many times. I think the city should continue to strive strategically for the benefit of the entire community and work for its citizens, strive to make our business community strong, keep our neighborhoods vital. It's a big task, but you know, those big general areas, I think, are areas that you have prioritized already, and I think will continue to do so. So that's kind of how I would phrase that.
Commissioner Sykes, you're fine.
All right, last question. One of the announced goals of the FFE is to work toward the elimination of generational poverty in Kalamazoo. That's a tall order. How should we work to accomplish this?
Well, of course, solving poverty, that's an easy one. But I think one of the ways to get at that is to involve everybody in the community who is impacted by the issue of poverty, and that includes the folks in poverty themselves. We have a lot of great organizations in our community that are working in that area, but I want to make sure all the citizens have their opportunity to play a role as well. And so I would emphasize making sure that people who are dealing with that on a day-in, day-out basis have an opportunity to speak to the issue and to help in the problem solving around this issue. That would be about it. There's plenty more, but that's not enough time for all that. Thank you.
Well, you do have a minute and some to anything else you'd like to share this evening.
Well, I'll just finish up by first thanking you for this opportunity. It's a great honor to be among these applicants. I really, you know, I can't say how much I am humbled and honored to be in front of you on this one. But I can tell you that for myself, I think I look at myself as a trustworthy person, and so I've worked in collaborative ways as a strong advocate for folks in need in this community. I've worked with many of you on this commission in a variety of ways that are quite productive, so I think I can be an asset to the foundation and and the work that you are doing. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for stepping forward and your willingness, and we appreciate you, and have a great evening. We will be making some type of decision here. I guess we're going to wander into that now, and you're more than welcome to stay. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioners, before we go through a process of voting, certainly what we'll do is we'll take citizens' comments now, since they've heard all the applicants and want to give them their opportunity, then let you take a little time to look at your notes and what have you, and then we'll, I think we're doing a balloting process. Is that similar to the last time? So any citizen wanting to comment on these applicants, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, commissioners, if you just take some time and look at your notes, and we'll go from there. One of the things I do want to say before all the applicants leave, and I know Mr. Hine is gone, but no matter what happens with these 6 individuals, we had some great folks standing before us, and then all those that applied even through the foundation process. And I would think that there are going to be committees and other work beyond just the board work. So hopefully we'll be communicating to individuals that we hope will stay involved or stay wanting to be involved in some way. So, anyway. Commissioner Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, just a question about process here. I'm not quite sure if we've pre-thought. I know when we created this group of 6, we passed around some ballots, and we each of us took an opportunity to write some names down, and those were collated by our clerk. I'm assuming that we could use a similar process here. I'm wondering, I just saw this put out a recommendation, and I'm not sure if something in particular.
Yeah, I was, Commissioner Urban?
A suggestion to offer that we rank them in preference order, so that on the very first vote we will see how we can start to narrow the choices down. I think after each round, I think we ought to have a chance to discuss the relative merits of the remaining candidates. I think that might expedite the process.
Vice Mayor?
From last meeting, my understanding was we were going to mirror the process that we did to select the 6. Where we voted, it went up on the screen. If we have 4, we're done voting. If we don't have 4, then we vote again.
Mr. Clerk, do you remember if we did indicate how it would proceed tonight?
There wasn't really an indication of how it would proceed. I do have ballots with the 6 names.
Before I go back to commissioners that have already interjected, Commissioner Cooney, Commissioner Sides, Commissioner Cunningham, do you have anything to offer in this before?
I didn't really get a chance to finish my comments because Commissioner Urban jumped in on it. So
Well, I understand that, but I'm going to go with Commissioner Sides, Cunningham, and Commissioner Cooney. We'll come back to you, Commissioner Anderson.
No, I don't have any significant thoughts on it.
Just an idea, when I ran or when I was appointed in 2015, there was only 1 vote for 1 person, and that turned up, and there was a revote because there needed to be a majority at that time, but that is also one option that could be on the table.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
So I don't support the idea of listing all 6 candidates from top to bottom. I don't think that's particularly helpful. So I would support the idea of listing a top 1, 2, or 3 max in order. And it is the case, you might find out that 4 people have indicated 1 person in the numbers 1 slot. And in essence, that's, I mean, the work is done at that point. But I don't want to go beyond listing 3 names in preferential order. I would be okay with that.
So I'm going to chime in since I haven't, I guess I lean towards more of what the Vice Mayor and Commissioner Cunningham has said. We typically work on a vote, and we're deciding on one issue, just like we decide on issues that were on the consent agenda or on the regular agenda. If we govern by the power of 4, then the majority takes the day. I don't know, because I wasn't planning to rank, I just didn't do that. I did my best to look at them and come up with a name, which is very, very hard. And so I know that's where the challenge becomes. It is a hard decision, but no different than a zoning and rezoning in a neighborhood was a hard decision tonight. That's just me. If you want to rank, I'll take a little more time and do that as well.
No.
Commissioner?
Just to play devil's advocate, say we only get 1 choice, 1, 2, 3 people get 2 votes, and 1 person gets 1 vote, then there will be a revote.
But if you want to rank, we can do that as well.
Okay, let's go.
May I say? Well, I think I have to really get my head around the point that any one of these 6 is going to be just fine.
Absolutely.
Yes.
given that there's going to be 5 people who are disappointed, and people who are advocating for those 5 are going to be disappointed, we have to keep in mind that any one of these 6 people could fill this role adequately, more than adequately.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So just to clarify, we're using ballots and we're voting for just one person? Can we do like top 2, or is that not allowed?
If you want to do that, I just need to see here consensus that says they want to do that. And then whether it's 2 or whether it's, I've heard 2, I've heard 3, I've heard 1. So, and there hasn't been a consensus that I've been able to count yet. Maybe I missed that, but Commissioner.
I will say that I would like the idea of at least 2.
2.
Because I'm splitting hairs over here personally.
I'm starting to hear consensus on that. All right, so 2. Take another moment, make sure you have your 2. Give you a minute or so, minute and a half, whatever. And you're going to, are we ranking them? Or are you just voting for 2 if you're?
I think that's just voting for 2.
Just voting for 2.
I guess you're voting for your number 1 and then number 2. So put 1 and put 2 if it's not on. No, that's not what you're doing? You're just putting 2 names on a piece of paper. Okay.
Just before we do this, I want to think, is there a possibility for unintended consequences on this?
Yes.
Yeah, so is that what we want to head into, is a possibility for unintended consequence, the way we're doing this? Doesn't make sense. I mean, let's just think just a moment before we do this. What is the possible, I mean, I don't want to imagine all the possible unintended consequences, but is that what we want to leave ourselves the opportunity for?
Well,
Commissioner.
well, one consequence could be that more than one person gets a majority of votes. Say like 2 people get 4 votes, okay? Then well, what do we do with that? Well, we ought to be thinking about that now. And so what Commissioner Anderson is expressing concern about, I share. I just have a suggestion about how to deal with that. Are there any other unforeseen consequences? Can we think about that besides the one I just mentioned?
Commissioner Sykes.
I can't think of any other unintended consequences, but I will wait to hear from everybody else. I guess I sort of envisioned it, if we each the first round voted for 2 people, then we could take, you know, the 2 folks that get the top number of votes, and then we could vote between those 2 in a second vote.
Yep.
Mr. Attorney.
I mean, you can do what you want. As the mayor said, you rule by the rule of 4. It's technically possible you could have 2 candidates that get 7 votes each. I mean, that's a possibility. And so what do? In that circumstance, you're basically saying there's 2 strong candidates, and then you try to break the tie on the second ballot. I suppose that's a possibility. The other problem comes is, what if somebody gets 6 and the other person gets 5, or 5 and 4? Do you have a winner, even though somebody did get 4 votes? I mean, those are the problems that could come out of putting 2 names on without ranking them.
Then we had to, it's going to take 2 ballots unless everybody.
Yeah, I guess I would assume that no matter what, even if we had 2 people get all 7 votes, then we run the second vote. And we can only vote for 1 that time, but at least we know who our top 2 are.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah, I get that.
Let's go with that.
And
Commissioner.
just for note, there was a 2 vote for Commissioner Cunningham in 2015.
Settled?
Settled.
So you're not ranking them, is that my understanding?
No.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you can vote twice for the same person, correct?
No. You can only vote once for the same person.
Yeah, make sure you sign them and put your name on them.
Maybe while those people are thinking, or maybe you're done. Okay, ask a question.
So Commissioners, it looks like Nathan Dannison has received 6 votes. That's the highest of the group. Unless there's some type of objection, I think this is how we work. Majority rules. Questions? We have appointed Nathan Dannison, or have nominated Nathan Dannison to the Foundation for Excellence. We are now at the opportunity, let me make sure I'm not messing that up. Yep. Madam Manager, you have a report this evening?
No, Mayor.
Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Mr. Attorney?
No, Your Honor.
All right. We are now at the opportunity for any citizen to comment on anything this evening. Please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
What's up, guys? Chris, again, currently homeless. That's what I wanted to talk about. I've lived in Kalamazoo for about 10 years. I lived at 14 O'Brien since 2008. 2012, um, y'all up here know, like, we tried to do things about the homeless population. And I started housing people from 2012 at 1407 to 2014. I housed over 20 people. In 2015, I started making ducks in a row. That was not supposed to stay at that property. That was supposed to go to 3 properties that I had obtained this last year to make this program. Now, I probably made enough noise to where everybody's got the understanding that I was condemned in 2 days after losing my electricity, which is unprecedented. It's not something that you don't get condemned in just 2 days. The times that I've been picked up and arrested over the night in this city, all the little things, the times that I got charged for something I had to pay for that wasn't right. I don't want to fight with you guys on all this anymore. I just want to make the duck program. The Edison Ducks in a Row is something I started with 3 other people. They all died in 2016. The program Edison Ducks in a Row is supposed to work with the EPA to use recycled resources to make a children's farm. It allows kids to learn about farming with the potential for career incubation. I get everything from preschoolers to high schoolers. The high schoolers, if somebody will let me put this program on the property I own, I can hire 1 to 4 youth in Edison. And the first 2 kids that I would hire are strikes that they messed up and they're trying to figure out how to do stuff because they already lost the promise. I can hire kids. I can do healthy teaching. I'm a WOM-HOF. I'm a 5th generation farmer. It's the one thing that I don't need a master's degree to understand. I've been taught it my whole life. My whole family knows everybody all around the area. And I want to use this opportunity to help the kids. And I've got my house condemned, and I have had my ass kicked up and down. When you guys condemned me, I didn't get back in house because I didn't know this was happening, so I didn't get a chance to winterize anything. If I do ever get back into my house, I have to fix the pipes, which it's not going to be livable until I do that, so the likelihood that I'm going to get back into my home and live is gone because somebody showed up on my property and made a decision in a city that I have bled for and bled for and bled for and bled for. And all of you that I fought, whether I was with you or against you, it's always been about the community. So I'm asking you, I know it's been a long night, but I'm asking for a motion. Let me make this program and give me something to stand on because I have nothing left. The city, not anybody else, this city has stopped me every step of the way, fined me thousands of dollars, charged me, thrown me in jail, and you took my home. I'm asking for a motion from this commission, which does have the ability to do this, to let me put this thing on my property and let me run this program and let me help the kids in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Smutek. I own the residence, it's a duplex actually, at 1291 Red Pine Way. And since May 8th of 2013, I've been receiving citations from the Community Planning and Development on Herbie-Kirby lawn violations as well as garbage cleanup. And I have a packet here which basically includes everything. And I live at the end of a cul-de-sac where 4 other units put their trash and garbage in front of my residence, and that's where they pick it up. So it's not like the residents are doing anything wrong, but when a container is left outside or someone else leaves garbage out there, I'm getting charged for it. And it totals to $428.50. So I'm looking for reimbursement for that. I'm trying to avoid having to go to small claims. I've consulted with an attorney on the issue, and he told me to reach out to you guys before taking it to court. So I have a packet here I'd like to pass around real quick. That's really all I have. If you guys have any questions, let me know. tried resolving this with the community planning development, Peter Elridge, and unfortunately I was unsuccessful. It really didn't go anywhere. I tried to explain what was occurring, and they literally told me they didn't want to hear it and to just pay the fine. So, and I get a couple of these years, so it's just been adding up. I reached out to Best Way Disposal, trying to find a solution, and I was looking at getting a dumpster that all the units could use, so it's just a single location point. And maybe that would resolve having multiple containers all to different buildings. And in addition, what I actually have done is I took numbers on my trash cans so they can identify which trash cans are mine. They were taking pictures of the cans they were moving and putting them in the back of my residence, and some of the cans they were moving weren't even affiliated with me. Like, there are different companies I have never done business with. They've been charging me those for those. So everything's in the packet. It's pretty well laid out.
So we don't respond back, but we have heard you, and commissioners may make comments during their time, and then we know staff is here tonight too, so.
All right. You guys want me to remain up here?
No, you're good to sit down. We'll make sure you get your packet back. Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Seeing no one, we are now at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Sykes.
It's been a long night. I hate going first because I never get to think about my comments before I go. First, I just want to thank everybody who's here and thank all of you for spending this long evening with me and each other. I think we did some really good work here, and I'm excited to see what comes from the FFE, truly. I do have a question related to Chris Wamhoff's issues, and just I'm wondering if it's normal to condemn that quickly when people's utilities go out. If it is, that concerns me, and I think that's something we may need to look at. Doing it so quickly just seems like, the first step should probably be, how can we help you get your utilities back on? It seems like, especially if we're a city that cares a lot about poverty. I also, I've expressed my support before. I think a number of us did for the ducks. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that moves forward, but they have my support. Yeah, and can we also have somebody address this other gentleman's issues, because I'm looking at the pictures and they don't seem as if they warrant $400 in fines. So maybe I'm wrong on that. Yeah, thank you to the community for celebrating MLK Day so thoroughly for 3 days in a row. Very exciting. Yeah, I guess that's all I've got. Good night, folks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Cooney.
Yeah, I would ask the city manager, deputy city manager, to please look into this and give us a report back on this and see what we can do in this. The only other thing I wanted to say was I would like to honor tonight somebody that we lost in this community who was a champion of social justice, and that was Gulnar Hussein. She worked for many years at Arcadia Elementary School. She was nationally recognized for her work with communities and schools and what she did for those kids there. She was a champion of peace and justice, very active in the peace community, very active in supporting all those who were underdogs, and particularly organizing around the Palestinian issues. We lost a great person, but we were greatly enriched by her contributions to this community.
Mr. Urban.
Oh, I'm next? You're not gonna, everybody else passed? I'm the one that's, oh, okay. My mind slipped a cog, it's so late. I wanted to take a moment to read an apology to the representatives of the Kalamazoo Municipal Golf Association, and I have a more extended set of remarks that all of you have on your dais there. But to the people who are going to see this on YouTube, I would like to address that in a shortened form. A few meetings ago, John Bradshaw, who is a member of the Kalamazoo Municipal Golf Association Board of Directors, gave us a presentation on the successes achieved by the city-owned golf courses in the past year. I'm referring to the Red Arrow Golf Course, Millwood, and Eastern Hills. I was remiss in not thanking Mr. Bradshaw for giving us his presentation and taking the opportunity to give a shout out to the Director of Golfing Operations, Mr. Dean Marks. He's under a contract with the city to run those courses. Dean and his board of directors have done much to improve the financial situation of the golf courses since the end of the Great Recession. And that was the gist of the report he gave us, but we, as a commission, did not acknowledge receiving that report, certainly not in a way that the directors expected it. And I want to correct that this evening. Memberships currently are up, and almost all of the debt that the Golf Association has incurred since the 1990s, mainly during the 1990s, by the city and the Golf Association is going to be paid off this year. I learned, and you should know also, that because of the way Dean Marks' contract was structured, Dean was paying down this debt with the money from his own proceeds that on account of his contract, and his total payout on that debt is amounted to $240,000. I'm, for one, very grateful of his having doing that, but he shouldn't have had to. He's developed, well, rather I should say, he has been devoted to maintaining and improving Kalamazoo golf since he was a kid. And the improving situation at the golf courses is due in no small part to him. And I don't believe that paying down the KMG debt was contemplated to be part of his contract. So you can picture the frustration that the Golf Association Board of Directors felt when they learned that the city had spent $250,000 for a new scoreboard for Mayor's Riverfront Park. You probably remember that was one of the consent items that we acknowledged. But actually, just for the record, the city actually only paid half that amount, $125,000. The balance was paid for that scoreboard by the Growlers baseball team. So it's not as bad as everybody first thought. But the frustration about that, in view of the situation in the golf courses, was expressed directly to me, and I understand that frustration. I hope all of us do. The rest of what I had, I think I will let you read at your leisure. I think the main thing was, right now, for the public to know is that I want to be sure that they understand that I've heard the people who have run the golf courses, and I'm very grateful for the effort that they've put in to make those courses work and continue to work. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cunningham?
I got a few things. First, I want to start off by saying thank you to all of the individuals who interviewed today. I do know how extremely stressful that that situation is. I can remember losing 10 pounds within 2 weeks studying for it, and I also lost a family member during that time. So it was, you know, you got life situations, and then you had interviewing. So once again, thank you to all of those who interviewed. You were all well qualified. I also want to encourage the city in regards to that zoning I do think that this is an opportunity to dig further into that community and figure out what it is and how it is we're going to go forth. In regards to Mr. Smutek and Mr. Wamhoff, I would ask that the city give us an update on both of those, both in regards to Mr. Wamhoff, both in regards to the DUC program and the condemning of a home within a couple of days per him. Also, you know, Martin Luther King, we celebrated a man amongst men, a giant, someone who will bring together, you know, generations of people for one cause. He literally unified a nation in one way or another. And I am thankful that our community acknowledges that across the board. I think a lot of organizations and agencies that I typically wouldn't see in the social justice realm working together to acknowledge the vision of Martin Luther King. And I want to acknowledge how impactful the city has been on a couple of programs. Well, in light of racial tension, I think we all can say to a degree that there's been a lot of frustration between black men in our community and the police force. Not just in our community, but across the United States. And I appreciate a lot of the efforts that our police force has took on and tasked themselves with to try and make themselves more accountable and also try to create a police force that is equitable across, you know, different variations of individuals, because we are all unique in our own ways. One being the police station and our plan to put a neighborhood park right there next to a police station. I think that is monumental to have that type of interaction and to try and bridge that gap on stress or frustration. Another project that I've been proud to be a part of is one where a part of the training for our new employees and I think our recently promoted police employees is to have black men of color come together, and it's almost like a speed dating. I can't really put it all into great terms, but it's a training where just African American males are in one room with these new appointees, these newly promoted individuals, and the sense of pride, one, to be selected to even sit in that room and to come into a room with Dr. Lewis Walker and other colleagues who have been giants in our community, and then to also see guys who I obviously grew up in Kalamazoo with who didn't necessarily always have the best background, but we're having this 30-second interaction that just means the world. And, you know, out of that, I've created 2 relationships personally with officers, but not only out of that, I've also created relationships with other black males in my community. And I just can't praise that program enough. And I think those are 2 things that should be highlighted in our organization as a city that I think is worth deeming to be proud of, and MLK, Martin Luther King, would also be proud of.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick follow-up to Mr. Walmoff's case for the deputy city manager. Kalamazoo, as you're aware, is we're supposed to be dripping our water. So we've talked about the condemnation process and how quick it went, but I'd also like to know what, if any, steps we took to help preserve the structure's pipes if we just went in and shut and condemned. Again, I'm dripping water right now. I think most of us in the lower income neighborhoods are dripping water because of the older housing structures. So what has been put in place to protect his property's pipes?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. A couple quick things. One, great celebration for Dr. King. And what I want to do is thank Martin Marcos and the team at the city for the day of service, the energy and effort put into that. Hundreds of individuals out serving our community all around the city. I was on the campus of Western Michigan University, and young people going out and working in the community. I had the opportunity to hang out with the good Dr. Cooney a little bit yesterday morning, and The whole teach-in day, I think, was amazing and provided a lot of value, and it helped everyone learn a little bit as well. I also want to, I lost my note. I don't know where my note is. Just want to speak on the rezoning for a moment, and I mentioned it earlier. Commissioners, as we wander through Imagine Kalamazoo and as we work through the master plan, there's going to be rub, and especially in light of some of the changes that we need, some of the best practices out there. You know, even tonight, we had one person talking about not wanting the land next to her house built on, and then someone else wanting to build anything 65 feet and up. And the one zoning change would have helped the situation, not solved the young lady's situation, but helped it, as in things would be lower and what have you, but that wouldn't have helped others. So it is this balancing act as you work in communities and work in neighborhoods. Not everyone is going to see things the same way. And we've got to use some type of expertise to try to go through the processes and move the work along. We have rezoned areas as this body without a community input process, besides the meetings. Of course, that happens, and I mean, what I mean by a huge input process. And we have to remember, we did spend 18 months working on getting everyone's thoughts and thinking around certain things. And beyond that, we worked in 2010 on some of these issues as well, that neighborhoods have had opportunity to dive into. I think the neighborhood plans give us another go at it, but at the end of the day, I don't know what neighborhood we've ever had that everyone's singing the same song. And so you may see this rezoning come back to you in some shape or form. And how do we put our best foot forward when we know that 8 or 9 story building does not belong next to someone's house? But to do that, you have to change the zoning. And you can't do spot zoning, just that spot. You've got to change zoning in the area. That's a quandary. You know, how do you put what's appropriate or what should be in an area like that? Because we would all say that a Radisson hotel does not belong in the middle of the Edison neighborhood or on Cobb and North Street. Well, that's zoning. That doesn't allow that. That's the challenge that we're going to have with this. But this is, I love zoning, so this is fun stuff to me. You may not like it, but I like the thought of how you plan your community, and that's what zoning helps you do along with the other processes. So good luck with the work ahead, because it will be fun. And then just, Commissioner Urban, thank you for mentioning the golf. I don't know that I was here for that meeting when it was presented. I don't remember, but I think your sentiments in regards to the appreciation for that work really is all of ours, and we don't always say something, and I know some people have expectations or whatever, but I believe that no one's going to be unhappy or disrespectful in regards to those that are working and making this system successful. And we know it's hard work, and so we do appreciate that. And I know the staff heard the citizens' comments, and I think the Deputy City Manager is on it, and with that, we are adjourned.